The Honorable Minister of Finance and Coordinator of the Economy, Chief Wale Edu, and our keynote speaker, good morning, sir. The Chair, Agora Policy, Ms. Ojobo Atiluku, morning, ma'am. Country Director, MacArthur Foundation, Dr. Kole Shatima, thank you for coming. The Head of International Cooperation and Development Director of the British High Commission, Ms. Cynthia Rowe, good morning. Professor Diana Mitlin, CEO of the African Cities and Research Consortium, she's with us virtually. Good morning, ma'am. Ms. Deborah Issa, the Lead Governance Specialist, World Bank, good morning, ma'am. Mr. Akin Oyebo, the Commissioner of Finance and Economic Development, Ekiti State, and Chairman, Forum of Finance Commissioners. Good morning, sir. Welcome. He joins us online, and other senior government officials here present, members of the diplomatic corps. The President of the Association of Local Governments of Nigeria, Honorable Bello Lawal Yandaki, represented by Honorable Akala Samuel Gajere, former Chairman of Karu Local Government Area and advisor to the Algon National President on Policy Research and Documentation. The founder, Agora Policy, Mr. Waziri Adio, our host for today. Professor Remy Emmanuel Ayede from the University of Ibadan. Good morning, sir. Our esteemed panelists this morning, Ajia Sadatu Mehdi, the Secretary General of the Women Rights Advancement and Protection Alternative, RAPA, Mr. Samson Itodo, Executive Director, Yaga Africa, Dr. Omar Yakubu, Executive Director, Center for Fiscal Transparency and Public Integrity, distinguished academics, researchers, and policy experts here present, leaders and representatives of civil society organizations here present, members of the media, all other respected invited guests, ladies and gentlemen. You are most warmly welcome to the policy conversation on local governance reforms in Nigeria, organized by Agora Policy, supported by the MacArthur Foundation, with, of course, support from Center for Fiscal Transparency and Public Integrity, the Cable African Cities Research Consortium as partners. Thank you all for the wonderful hand of fellowship to the Agora Policy. Today, we all gather in this room to reflect, to rethink, and most importantly, to reform, to interrogate the question, is Nigeria's third tier of government finally ready to stand on its own 2 feet, or perhaps just depending on pocket money from the other 2 tiers of government? Or will it continue to limp under the weight of political overreach and fiscal dependence? We acknowledge that talking about local governance in Nigeria, when I was thinking about this, is like we discussing jollof rice in West Africa. Everyone has an opinion. Very few agree, but the stakes are very high. And all of us in this room, we agree to the fact that the stakes are very high. And this morning, we gather not to simply talk about governance, but to dissect it, to challenge it, and to reimagine it at its most critical tier, the local government area, which every one of us in this room is from one local government area or the other. I'm particularly, I'm from the Anocha North local government area of Delta State. So we are gathering here this morning not to simply talk about governance, but to reimagine it, because in truth, what is a nation if its governance doesn't reach the streets, the schools, and even the smallest towns? So today is not just another policy gathering, it is a civic intervention, and I am honored to serve as your host, moderator, and MC for this gathering. I am Nancy Naji, I'm the executive producer and anchor of Moneyline with Nancy on AIT, the business program on AIT. So to set the tone this morning, we begin, of course, not with policy speak or PowerPoint initially, but with poetry, because sometimes to truly grasp the weight of governance success or even governance failure or the beauty of reform, you need a verse more than prose. Please welcome to the stage Ms. Adetola Adesewa for a spoken word performance that will quickly awaken our senses. Please, a round of applause for her as she comes to the podium. Please, another round of applause for her as she comes.
Good morning, everyone. It is a pleasure to stand before you this morning to share poetry. But let me tell you something. This is not just a poem. It is a call to action, to the government, to we the people. So listen. Please listen to me. There is fire on this mountain. Not the holy kind Moses knelt before to hear from the Lord, but the kind that burns through budgets and ballot boxes. The kind that swallows schools until children learn under leaking roofs, till mothers birth the leaders of tomorrow in clinics with no electricity, till the youth grow old waiting for a chance that probably will never come. If you ask me, I think the councillors have signed a treaty with silence, because tell me why their response is, we'll get back to you shortly. Please, sir, how long is shortly? How long does it take to plant a few naira seeds to grow our potholed roads? How long does it take to listen to our heartaches? How long does it take to light up the clinic down the road? To patch the leaking roofs in our classrooms? How long does it take for allocations to mean more than development? How much does it take for them to listen to us? We're tired of waiting. How much longer do we wait? 34 trillion has gone through our LGAs in the past 26 years, but ask your neighbor, how much has truly reached us? This fire is real. And prayers alone won't cut it. We need action. We need voices that don't die after elections. We need a system that gets it. A system that gets us. We're not asking for too much. We just need transparency. We don't tire to chop empty promises. We hunger for change, for development. See, this is not just another poem. This is a call to those who wear agbada in our LGAs. Okay, shey you go serve, abi you go shift one side. Shey you go light up our clinics, build our roads. Shey you go fix our boreholes, make we for no die of thirst. Shey you go hear us. The government is us. So my people, I say, ask questions. Speak your truth. Vote like your life depends on it, because actually it does. And if you're wondering if your voice matters, if your votes count, let me remind you that a single match can light up the room. So vote. Get yourself involved. Stand gallant. Make them not think say we know day. Because if the head is sick, the body can still stand. But if the feet is broken, tell me, how then can the nation walk? We are the people. We are the government. We are Nigeria. But you see, there is fire on this mountain. And if we don't quench it, this fire will consume us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Adetola, for that stirring piece. You know, in Nigeria, they say all politics is local. But when the local government chairman knows my grandmother by name, which she should, as it were, if things are really working well, and still hasn't fixed the road to our house, then we know there's work to do. So thank you very much again, Ms. Adetola, for telling us that there is fire on the mountain. And just like Asa the singer sang, there's fire on the mountain, but nobody's running. So what exactly do we do? So perhaps That's also part of why we are gathered here today. Now, to formally welcome us and officially open this gathering, it is my honor to invite a woman whose life's work embodies justice, leadership, and conviction. I'm already seeing her approaching the stage, so please welcome the formidable chair of Agora Policy, Ms. Ojobo Atiluku, for the welcome address.
Our distinguished guest, the Honorable Minister of Finance and Coordinating Economy, Chief Edun. May I stand on the existing protocol as laid by our moderator and said all was duly observed. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor and privilege to welcome you all to this second edition of our policy dialogue, Local Governance Reforms, a year after the Supreme Court's ruling. Thank you for making the time on such a wet day to be here, whether physically or virtually, as we engage in what is a deeply important conversation for Nigeria's democratic future. It was a year ago, in a 6-1 majority, that the Supreme Court held that local government councils are entitled to direct allocations from the Federation account, that caretaker committees appointed by state governors are unconstitutional, and that state governments must not interfere with the local government council autonomy, especially by withholding or mismanaging federal allocations. This was a landmark judgment, affirming the constitutional autonomy of local governments. The ruling was not merely a legal milestone, it was a constitutional reaffirmation of the principle that local governance must be closer to the people, more transparent and more accountable. In our usual way, Agora Policy immediately swung into action. We published an Agora Policy note titled Beyond Financial Autonomy, the imperative of moving from local government to local governance in Nigeria. Just a few different letters in the words government and governance, and it changes so much the whole idea of what we need to have. Ultimately, the policy note urged structural reforms beyond legal rulings to empower local governments as effective democratic institutions. On 27th April, we published another Agora Policy note on why credible elections matter for the revival of democracy in Nigeria. The questions remain. Have we seen meaningful devolution of authority and resources? Have local governments become more responsive, more capable, or more participatory? Has the judgment shifted the balance of power in a way that empowers citizens and strengthens democratic institutions at the local level? If we are truly committed to restoring the promise of local democracy, then we must pursue a roots and branch reform of our local governance system. Our goal is to provide a platform for frank dialogue, policy learning, and cross-sector collaboration. We are particularly eager to hear from a cross-section of the society, state actors, local government officials, traditional institutions, women leaders, youth groups, and development partners. Each of you holds a piece of the reform puzzle, and only together can we advance sustainable and equitable governance. We recognize that policy change does not come by court rulings alone. It requires political will, institutional capacity, and civic influence. That is why today, I also give you a preview of the Agora Policy-led Local Governance Accountability Portal, also known as LGA Portal. The portal is presently at the review stage. It will house a searchable database of the FAC allocations from 1999 to date, the profiles of the 774 local government areas, and the elected local government officials. This will be a powerful tool for capability for a genuine local governance systems development. As a forward-thinking, non-partisan, solution-driven, patriotic Nigerian think tank, Agora Policy is a policy compass for the uncertain times, convening and being a platform for evidence-based policy research and purposeful dialogues and capacity building. We are in just such a point in our local governance journey as a country. And again, Agora Policy has convened representatives, frontline stakeholders for an interrogative dialogue to determine where we are since the Supreme Court was bold enough to deliver that land-back judgment. I conclude my welcome by reminding us that the road to meaningful decentralization is long and often contested, but it is one we must travel to build a Nigeria in which citizens feel the impact of governance and where they are in any part of Nigeria. This dialogue is part of that journey. On behalf of Agora Policy and our valued partners, MacArthur Foundation, without which this would not have been feasible, Center for Fiscal Transparency and Policy, the Cable, African Cities Research Consortium, I welcome you each and all. Thank you.
Please, another round of applause for Madam Chair for setting the tone. Just like she mentioned, local governance is very, very important because when it comes to governance, everyone says they want to bring government closer to the people, but we need to make sure that it's not just during elections when the only closeness perhaps means a bag of rice only. So I guess that is also why we're here today. Just before we go ahead, let me just quickly acknowledge a few VIPs in our midst. Mr. Chris Okeke from the British High Commission, thank you for coming, sir. Mr. Amara Wankpa, DG Yaradua Center, thank you, we appreciate your presence. Ms. Cassandra Caraway from the U.S. Embassy, thank you for coming. Ambassador Emmanuel Obioka for National President, Alumni Association of the National Institute, we warmly recognize you. Dr. Dita Bassi, Director Policy from NAITI, thank you for coming. Hajia Sadatu Madi, Secretary General of RAPA, thank you, ma'am, for being here. To open this conversation with deeper reflections, of course, is a man whose leadership in governance continues to amplify Nigeria's policy reform ecosystem. A scholar at heart, he has taught across Maiduguri, Toronto, and Ohio, and continues to champion transparency, accountability, and civic renewal. He's the director of MacArthur Foundation Nigeria office and the co-director of the On Nigeria Big Bet. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Kole Shatima, director of MacArthur Foundation Nigeria office.
Is that a special mic for me? Or? Okay. Good morning, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I want to recognize the Honorable Minister of the Economy, Minister of Finance and Coordinating Economy. Sorry if I mess up the whole protocol. But also other distinguished ladies and gentlemen who are here, and apologies for rushing in late. When Waziri called me, I told him I was at Abacha Barrack. So rain, I think, has clogged up all our roads into the city at that time. But it's my pleasure to be here this morning on behalf of the MacArthur Foundation to say a few words. One of them is to say that this is certainly a very, very important topic for all of us. I recall like 5 years ago when someone from my village called me and said whether Buhari was still the president of Nigeria. So I said, okay, what is the problem? He said that the water in the village was no longer working. I said, well, but you know, before you come to Abuja to look for President Buhari, don't you know that there are actual steps that you have to take to come to Abuja to ask that kind of question? You know, have you talked to our councillor in the village? Have you talked to our House of Assembly member, to the governor of our state? You know, we have all those people. You are asking whether Buhari was still the president of Nigeria. But I think that comment was a mere illustration of the mentality of our people, where they believe and they think that everything has to happen from Abuja. and they think that Abuja is the solution to all their problems. So we are very excited when we have this opportunity to support the Agora Policy Center. And I recall also like 5 years or so when Waziri came to the office after hours, maybe about 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock, and he was trying to convince me why we should support Agora Policy. It was a new brand organization, and I was scratching my head, and I was saying, Waziri, do you really think that Agora Policy will make a difference in this country? Is it that we are short of policy ideas in this country? That's why the country is not moving. And I thought that, well, I think that our policy is made by consultants and by politicians, more accurately by contractors. They are the one who seems to be making policy for us. But he said that no, he thinks that this is something very important, that we should have a policy think tank in our country that will provide a space for people to come, have a conversation, reflect on what is happening in the country and other things. And I think that all of us who have been following the work of Agora Policy can attest to the fact that Agora Policy Center has certainly created a niche for itself, for the country, as well as I think that in the world itself as well. Because I am aware that many people, many organizations around the world reach out to Agora Policy on very, very important issues. So we are very excited, very happy to have this opportunity to support the Agora Policy Center, because we think that as a country, as a people, we should have a policy center that speaks to policy issues across the country. We don't have to go to Washington, we don't have to go to London or any other centers whereby our policymakers will come and speak about our country. And we hope that Agora Policy becomes our own center whereby policymakers will come and make important statements as well. This is our dream, this is our hope, and we hope that all of us who are here will be able to come and join this conversation. I'm very happy that the minister is here with us this morning, because I think that the Agora Policy has done a lot of good work, and I think his presence certainly is an illustration for his own support, for the commitment of the government to make sure that this country is better. And this country is better because of the kind of work that organizations like Policy Center, Agora Policy Center are doing. So I welcome you all to this conversation, and I have to also apologize because I have a flight to catch, so that I may not be staying long, but definitely I will wait and listen to the minister so that I can take my notes, and then I can remind him whenever we meet somewhere. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Please, another round of applause for Dr. Shatima. We'll move next to the Goodwill messages, and our first speaker is representing, of course, one of Nigeria's oldest development allies, the British High Commission, an institution deeply involved in public sector reforms across continents. Our next speaker has served in Afghanistan, Nepal, Sierra Leone, Tanzania, and now leads international cooperation in Nigeria. She brings a very deep depth of expertise to this issue. Please welcome Ms. Cynthia Rowe for the Goodwill message.
Good morning, and Honourable Minister for Finance and Coordinating the Economy, Chair of Agora, all protocols observed, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, thank you for having me here. Let me start by thanking Agora Policy and also the MacArthur Foundation for inviting me to share a few thoughts on this matter. It's always a pleasure to be part of conversations that really matter, and this is obviously one of those conversations. And policy dialogues like this are more than just events. They are spaces where ideas meet, where action starts, where reform begins, and not just in documents, but in dialogue. And they remind us that active citizenship is not a luxury, but it's a necessity for national development. And I come from a very passionate perspective on this. I started my career in public sector reform, and thank you for my excellent introduction. And local government sat at the heart of all of that reform and all of that action. And I remember my first time walking into a group of about 150 local councillors in the UK. And I was a youngish woman at the time, and there were 150 60-year-old men sort of sitting with their arms folded and cynical expressions on their face. And my job was to convince them that they could do better for their communities by changing the way that they were held accountable. And I have to tell you, it was terrifying, and it was challenging, and it was very satisfying, and we became fast friends in the end. But reform is a tough gig. It's really tough to do. I was part of the vanguard of innovation, if you like, in the 2000s that changed the 200-year-old committee system in the UK to a different model. So we had a committee system of joint committees that often didn't have teeth. They lacked teeth. And what we did was we split out the executive and the scrutiny functions so that it was really clear who was decision-making and who was spending and who was being held accountable. And fast forward 20 years, I was working with my teams in Nepal, with the Nepali government, to put in place a unique form of federalism in sometimes the most remote part of the Himalayas, that was part of the political settlement after the civil war, after the conflict in Nepal. And we worked with provinces and we worked with local government, ranging from complex tax reform and complex allocations and debt reform to things as simple as sitting mentors alongside women who were taking office for the very first time, who didn't know how to call a meeting or how to write a minute. And all of that matters, and all of that matters because that was all about getting results for those communities. Local governance reform is a deeply political issue here in Nigeria and across the world. And it touches on questions of sovereignty, it touches on questions of legitimacy, and more importantly, it touches on the everyday lives of people. And each country approaches reform differently, shaped by its own history, shaped by its own institutions, and by its own people. And I hear you loudly when you talk about a Nigerian think tank for Nigeria. And so I won't presume to judge Nigeria's path, but I can share a few lessons from our own experience and from our long-standing partnership with Nigerian governments. At its heart, local governance is about how councillors are elected, how revenues are raised and how revenues are spent, and how citizens are involved in those decisions that affect their communities. And they're not abstract issues, they're real, and they matter deeply to people. And international evidence shows that when decentralisation is done well, in whatever form, it leads to fairer, more efficient and more resilient public services, from health to education, water and sanitation, infrastructure, all of those important things. And here in Nigeria, we've seen what happens when communities truly own their own projects. We know that the results are stronger, and we know that the results are more sustainable. And for over 20 years, the UK has worked alongside Nigerian states and local governments to strengthen planning, budgeting, and service delivery. And we have some experiences that we can share. Through programs like Mobilising for Development and the Partnership to Engage, Reform and Learn, Pearl, many of you will know it as, we've supported Nigerian-led efforts to make the relationship between governments and their citizens more transparent and more open to everyone in their communities. Kaduna State is a great example. Local governments are leading the way, they're developing their own plans and budgets, and they're working with communities to select priority projects through a community development charter. And a small example is Kudun LGA. They carried out major renovations of a primary school in Masawa. There had been years of dilapidation. There were pupils, school children sitting under leaking roofs. We all know this picture, sitting on bare floors. The community themselves voted to intervene in that school. They led their own consultations. They put it into the local budget in 2023. The renovation works were completed, and they have new chairs, they have new tables, they have teachers, and the teachers are coming in to teach. And that significantly improved conditions. It sounds like a small project, but it makes a big difference if you think about every child that goes through that school over time. Challenges remain. A key challenge is the state joint local government account. That's long been a source of frustration. We understand that, and we can see that, and there have been various approaches to that across states, and there's been limited transparency. And we know that the Supreme Court's landmark decision was a major step forward. It clarified the rules around disbursement, but what we know is needed now, and what we are told by LGAs and everyone involved, is that we need a clear, agreed framework for managing those funds. So without this, of course, primary schools don't get funded, people don't get the healthcare they deserve, all the things that make up a productive and rich society. So looking ahead, I'm going to offer 5 lessons from the UK experience with devolution. And as Nigeria charts its path forward, these are the things that we thought about and we found. And they might sound obvious, but I'm going to state them anyway. So number 1 is the clarity of roles between state and local governments, and that's essential. It reduces overlap and it improves service delivery. The second, strategic planning. Strategic planning has to accompany autonomy. Independence without direction risks inefficiency. Citizen engagement, number 3. Citizen engagement builds legitimacy. Councils have to be rooted in the communities that they serve. Number 4, fiscal autonomy is vital, but it must come with strong safeguards for transparency and accountability. And number 5, democratic values matter. So free and fair elections are the foundation of public trust. And these are issues that every single country, including the UK, grapples with. And it's an ongoing grappling. It's not a one-off thing. It's something that we continually have to work on. And then finally, for me, I would just say, get the incentives right. If there's one thing I've learned over my years in this area, getting the incentives to act really, really matters, whether they're political, informal, formal, whichever ones they are. So finally, I will bring my goodwill to a close. Nigeria is undertaking, of course, bold and transformational reforms. Agora policy deserves credit for keeping these issues in the spotlight. It's a tough gig, as I said, and for creating spaces where ideas can be tested, can be talked about, and can be refined. And real change happens when citizens hold their leaders to account. And as a partner and as a friend, the UK, where we are welcome and invited, stands ready to support on that. So I very much look forward to hearing about the recommendations from today's dialogue. You have the UK's full goodwill and full support on this, and I hope you have an excellent day. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Rowe. Just like she said, we need accountability, especially even at that level of government. Before we get into the next goodwill message, let me just quickly recognize a few personalities in our midst. Barrister Victor Morocco, Chairman, Fiscal Responsibility Commission. Thank you very much, sir, for coming. The Honorable Chairman of the ICPC, Dr. Musa Adamu Aliyu, SAN, represented here by Mr. Bello Idris, Head of Local Government Initiatives Division, ICPC. We also have the Executive Director of Code, Hamzat Lawal. Thank you for coming. Mr. Charles Odi, the Director General of Small and Medium Enterprises Development Agency. That's a mouthful, but we just know the agency as SMEDAN, and is represented here by Dr. Mrs. Ime Andy, Acting Director, Agribusiness Development and Extension Services Department. Thank you very much for coming. Now, our next short goodwill message comes from another institution that knows firsthand the importance and complexity of governance reforms. Our first, a scholar and a global voice on African cities who believe cities must work for their people and not just for GDP. She's a professor of global urbanism at the University of Manchester and chief executive officer of the African Cities Research Consortium. Please welcome Professor Diana Mitlin. She joins us virtually. Professor Mitlin, good morning.
Good morning. Thank you, MC. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. So just briefly, I would like to share a goodwill message. Honourable Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, esteemed guests, I will adopt the protocol already established. So I bring you this goodwill message from the African Cities Research Consortium at the University of Manchester, and I am delighted to be able to bring this message to this Angora-hosted event, aiming to catalyse reform in local government financing. Led by the University of Manchester and financed by FCDO, the African Cities Research Consortium merges 7 core partners that represent international policy think tanks, universities, and international development organisations. We are working in 12 African cities in order to develop new approaches to urban policy programming and practice on the continent. In this current phase, which is focused on African research, we're working on 5 cities, one of which is Lagos. The action research projects in this phase in Lagos are very much led by Professor Tybert Lawrenson from the Centre for Housing and Sustainable Development at the University of Lagos. Professor Lawrenson is also a Leverhulme Professor, Professorial Fellow at the University of Liverpool, and we are, of course, delighted to benefit from her expertise in the UK. So the analysis led by Professor Lawrenson has initiated a number of action research projects. So what is really clear in our work? That local governance is absolutely critical to securing positive outcomes for urban residents. That might include efforts to improve the prosperity of cities, providing employment and livelihood opportunities, or efforts to improve access to basic services and land for the very lowest income residents. Local governments led by those committed to change can do much to address the needs that residents have, working with residents' groups and workers' association. We've really seen in Africa and beyond Africa the potential of such an approach to identify win-win agendas, develop a collaborative ambition, and institute activities based very much on a co-production approach and co-production principles. In our work with communities and cities across Africa, and very much led by African expertise, we have developed our own theory of change centred on the critical factors that we consider important to success, factors that have already been highlighted by the speakers to date. So the African Cities Research Consortium, our theory of change rests on 4 pillars. A first pillar is elite commitment and the importance of local political leadership. A second pillar is the importance of mobilised citizens, citizens who are organised and pressing for change, and who know the kinds of changes they want. A third pillar is enhanced state capability and capacity, so very much officials are all and who is required. And our final pillar is reform coalitions, the aggregation of expertise, be it academic, NGO, civil society, local government and residents, people coming together to understand and plan for change. One of our cross-cutting themes is municipal financing, which we recognise is absolutely critical for residents to be able to secure their needs. And we recently supported a policy dialogue in Accra, which really financed on the potential to strengthen revenue from property and use it to secure redistribution and address essential residents' needs. That policy dialogue was very much pitched at the continental level. So I would close by saying that Agora policy is right to highlight the potential of local government's reform in Nigeria. And I think it has an essential contribution to make to this conversation. It's already making that contribution through convening a multiplicity of voices, local government, national government, academia, and diverse civil society organisations. So I'm really delighted to be able to share this goodwill message and I very much look forward to learning about the outcomes of your deliberation. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Mitlin, for that intervention. Thank you very much, ma'am. We appreciate you. It is now my distinct honor to introduce our next speaker, who happens to be our keynote speaker. Of course, a man whose portfolio is perhaps one of the most watched in the country today. I don't know about other people, but let me speak for myself because I know I watch him, with laser-focused lenses, even beyond what I'm putting on now. From, Chase Merchant Bank, World Bank's IFC, to Lagos State Treasury House, where he served as Commissioner of Finance. Now at the federal helm, he's steering Nigeria's economy at a time when fiscal federalism and subnational capacity are under serious scrutiny. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Olawale Edun to the stage, Nigeria's Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, for his keynote address. Please make it louder.
Thank you, and thank you, Nancy, for that introduction. A very good morning. The Chair, Agora Policy, Ms. Ojobo Atuluku, the Country Director, MacArthur Foundation, Dr. Kola Shetima, thank you for staying. Mrs. Cynthia Rowe, Head of International Cooperation and Development Director of the British High Commission. I think with your 5 points, you've said it all. Ms. Deborah Issa, Lead Governance Specialist, World Bank, the founder, Agora Policy, my friend, my brother, Mr. Waziri Adio. I'm particularly relieved that I could make this occasion, no matter for how short a time, because Mr. Waziri Adio has been a pillar of support and strength to our team at the Ministry of Finance. He always available to help us with our retreats and our thought leadership sessions. Thank you very much indeed. Esteemed panelists, distinguished academics, let me not forget the Chair, Fiscal Responsibility Commission, the representative of the Chair, ICPC, and of course, Chair Smidan. Representatives of CSO, civil society organizations, CSOs here present, gentlemen of the press, invited guests, ladies and gentlemen. Let me once again express my appreciation to Agora Policy for this kind invitation to deliver some keynote remarks. Let me also commend the Center for Fiscal Transparency and Public Integrity, as well as the Cable organization, and with the support of the MacArthur Foundation for convening this very timely gathering. And I understand it's the second policy dialogue, and I would like to just encourage Agora Policy to stay the course, to maintain the effort, and to keep on providing their thought leadership, use their convening power to continue to support the area of improvement in our governance generally, and in particular in this area of local governments. This particular policy dialogue speaks to an urgent national priority, making our system at the local government not only democratic in structure, but impactful in delivery. The aim and the strategy, the policy, the determination of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is to lift millions of Nigerians out of poverty and in no short time. And the key starts with the grassroots, the local governments, as we all know. The reforms that were referred to, I think, by Cynthia Rowe, that have been undertaken in the last couple of years, as she has rightly said, required boldness, courage, determination, but they have laid the groundwork for stimulating economic resilience, macroeconomic stability, and therefore getting to the next phase. If the first phase was removing major macroeconomic distortions in the economy by implementing market pricing of petroleum products and market pricing of foreign exchange, the next stage was to stabilize the economy, curtail inflation, get the reserves up, get the deficit under control, and boost revenue generally as a means of preparing the grounds for investment that would increase productivity, grow the economy, and create jobs. And that's the way to lift millions out of poverty. So the next phase, and we have just heard from the figures released by the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics, in the first quarter, the economy grew at about 3.4%, and 3.5, let's say. But that is really half of the target. In order to really help people at all levels in the society, particularly the poorest and most vulnerable, we need to be growing at around 7% per annum, and that is the target of the administration, anchored on increased productivity and job creation. And the local government system is fundamental to the renewed hope agenda of the administration in delivering the gains of economic reforms to the people. We are here a year after a landmark Supreme Court ruling affirmed the autonomy of Nigeria's 774 local government areas. By this ruling, the judgment does provide an opportunity for local governments to discharge their mandates as engine of growth and to bring development closer to the people. There is going to be a panel, I know, and they will go into the nitty-gritty of the ruling and its implementation. But in an environment, as was emphasized, one of the pillars talked about by Cynthia was democracy, a democratic environment. And in a democracy, rule of law is paramount. The Supreme Court has ruled, and it is the duty, the obligation, and the determination of the federal government of Nigeria to implement the ruling of the Supreme Court. And that is what has been done so far over the last year or so. Firstly, the Supreme Court stated that no local government that is not, the only local governments that are democratically elected should have access to funds from the Federation account. And over the year since the ruling, that is what the government of the Federal Republic of Nigeria has implemented. The latest was Lagos State, which has just had its elections, local government elections earlier this month. So that aspect of the Supreme Court ruling has been implemented determinedly and with capacity, as they say. I think the second key item is to ensure compliance with direct payments to the local governments. And as we have heard, when you have policy, the challenge and the requirement is to implement is one that needs determination, political will, capacity, and those items are being brought to bear in terms of implementing the payments. And what we have to remember is that it is a work in progress. It is not, sometimes it's not as simple as flicking a switch, because, for example, in this case, and as I said, I'm sure the panelists will delve into it, you have the situation of a primary healthcare structure. You have primary education funding. The current funding structure is one that would need to be very much tinkered with in order for the complete direct payment of funds to each individual local government. So these are some of the situations through determination, skill, capacity, and goodwill on all sides. They will be gradually unwound and dealt with such that the Supreme Court judgment can be implemented. But at the heart of this whole effort is development at the grassroots level. Is development local government by local government, and even ward by ward. And the federal government of Nigeria very much recognizes this, and that is why we will shortly, under broader governance agenda, and is recognizing that sustainable local government hinges on infrastructure connectivity. And it speaks particularly to the demographic of the young people who need access to technology, they need connectivity, and the project prioritizes the construction and rehabilitation of critical digital technology hubs across every local government. And this increased connectivity has significantly improved access to markets, both domestically and internationally, access to education, access to health services, and thereby fostering inclusive economic growth, elevating the standards of living in the local governments. And finally, just by concluding the type of interventions that the federal government, recognizing the critical nature of intervening at the local government level, is in partnership with the World Bank, the HOPE program, the Human Capital Opportunities for Prosperity and Equity. And this is a comprehensive federal initiative supported by the World Bank and is designed to address critical challenges in healthcare, basic education, and governance at the local government level. And of course, as we had heard earlier, with the funding that is coming to the local governments, governance, capacity to manage those funds is a critical element. And this project speaks to that, governance at the local government level. But in addition, there is also what we call a program for results funding initiative for education and primary health. And these are expected to provide improved outcomes, management of local governments, management of their finances, improved healthcare, improved education, which of course are critical to well-being, to increasing the human capital index. And so we are here to talk about local government autonomy and fiscal autonomy, as has been laid down by the Supreme Court. But apart from the nitty-gritty of providing funds to the local governments, much more important is the comprehensive approach to development at the grassroots level, at the local government level. It's one thing having the money. It's one thing, as was said earlier, and I must commend the 5 points we were given by the British High Commission. One of them was strategic planning. There should be a plan as to, okay, how exactly, and we know and we agree that there are 8,809 wards, of which make up the 774 local governments. And they are unique and they have different needs, but there must be an overall strategic plan. And that is why just last week at the Federation Account Allocation Committee meeting, we did decide that there should be dialogue between the federal and the subnationals on developmental initiatives, developmental priorities. And likewise, there will be, and there needs to be, further communication, consultation, and collaboration as we try to implement this all-important step for local government autonomy. And it will always be the same in terms of implementation of policy. We have, after this, I will, just like my brother, Dr. Shetima, will shortly have to take my leave because I'm also chairing a meeting of the National Single Window Project. That is a major transformational project in the trade sector, but it is the same challenge of the need to have the will, to have the capacity and the determination to implement what on paper is a very, very worthwhile project. Similarly, yesterday I was at the Senate and they were saying that there's a law and it is not being implemented. And the agency in question, the head, he said, I've just come from, it was Lagos in this case, I've just come from Lagos, where before the law can be implemented, even though it is on the statute book, there's a requirement for consultation. There's a requirement for agreement on the implementation modalities. So what I will leave us with is that we have a sound law as laid down by the Supreme Court. There are other laws regarding the unconstitutional provisions regarding local government finances already on the statute books. And so it is the collaboration, cooperation, determination, and the willingness of all to achieve success that will be paramount in ensuring that we achieve what the justices of the Supreme Court have laid down for us, which is implementation of fiscal autonomy for local governments. I look forward to whatever I can join in of the panel discussion in particular, but I wish us all successful deliberations. And I end by once again congratulating and commending Agora Policy, and all the other partners. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Chief Wale Edu. Thank you for that intervention. Thank you, Honorable Minister. Our next item will be listening to a message which would come from an expert whose work on governance, justice, and political economy spans continents. From East Africa to the Pacific Islands, she is the lead governance specialist at the World Bank and a former law professor at Georgetown and George Washington University. Please welcome Ms. Deborah Issa, the lead governance specialist at the World Bank, for a brief message.
Good morning. Thank you very much. Honorable Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, other dignitaries, friends, please allow me to stand on existing protocols. As everyone else who stood up here, I really would like to start by thanking Agora Policy for once again organizing an important policy dialogue. This is particularly timely 1 year on from the Supreme Court decision reaffirming local government autonomy. I believe that we can all agree, is this working? No, here. I believe that we can all agree that, in principle, local government, as the authority closest to the people, is in the best position to make decisions that address local preferences and needs. This is the principle of subsidiarity. I think we can also agree that, in reality, federal systems are often sites of contestation over power and resources, and this often leads to mismatches between assignment of responsibilities, resources, and capacities. This is not only in Nigeria. Many countries have followed trajectories of decentralization and re-centralization in ways that distort the ability of the lowest tier of government to function. The Supreme Court decision aimed to correct these distortions by interpreting the Constitution as requiring the political and financial autonomy of local governments. Its implementation, however, has revealed the disagreements about what exactly this means. What sort of supervision, oversight, and functions can states exert over and on behalf of local governments? What requirements must be in place for local governments to receive funds directly? What policies and practices can ensure local government accountability? No doubt, much of the reason for non-implementation or slow implementation is political. Some state governors simply do not want to lose the power they have over the people and budget of local governments. Others are primarily concerned about a lack of capacity, systems, and accountability mechanisms in local governments. They don't trust local governments to do the right thing. And this creates a vicious cycle of low trust, low capacity in local government. As Agora posted yesterday, and we saw up here on the screens, there's a lot at stake. Since 1999, local government share of FAC has been 35.2 trillion naira. Also posted yesterday, in June 2025 alone, FAC distributed 445 billion naira for local governments. But there's more than money at stake. Government does not exist for the sake of government, but to provide public services. And from this perspective, it's fair to say Nigeria is in crisis. Nigeria is among the bottom 5 countries globally on metrics of maternal mortality, under 5 mortality, and learning poverty. With a fast-growing population, this will only get worse unless there's a significant improvement in the delivery of basic services to the people. I'd like to suggest another way of thinking about the problem of local government. Rather than focus on constitutional debates, snap elections that meet the letter but not the spirit of the judgment, and an endless labyrinth of requirements for opening bank accounts, we should focus on what it will take to make a major step change in the way government provides services for the population. Local government has a critical role to play as the primary point of contact for citizens and service facilities, as an important source of funding for the front line. For this, they need to have the trust of the population, capacity, and accountability for their decisions and management of funds. And for services like health and education, they will need to collaborate with states and the federal government to align planning, resources, policies, and incentives to deliver. Let's keep the ultimate aim of government and governance in mind in our decisions today. Thank you very much, and on behalf of the World Bank, we're eager to support the way forward on these very important reforms, including through the HOPE program that the Honorable Minister has mentioned, which is supporting primary health and basic education at the subnational level. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Issa. Thank you for that intervention. Very quickly, our next message is from an institution central to Nigeria's pursuits of fiscal discipline and accountability, the Fiscal Responsibility Commission. Representing the commission here, of course, is its chairman, Barrister Victor Murako, who brings a legal and institutional perspective to the ongoing conversation. Please, let's welcome Barrister Victor Murako, chairman of the Fiscal Responsibility Commission.
Thank you. Honorable Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of Economy, Your Excellency, let me rest on already established protocol for want of time. I'm deeply honored to be here to join Agora for this very important policy dialogue, Team Local Government Reforms, a year after the Supreme Court ruling. I extend my profound gratitude to Agora Policy, the Center for Fiscal Transparency and Public Integrity, and the Cable for organizing this timely, critical event. We cannot thank them enough because this couldn't have come at a better time. I bring you Goodwill from Fiscal Responsibility Commission. I indeed want to express profound appreciation to the organizing team for recognizing the pivotal role our Commission plays in promoting fiscal transparency, accountability, and prudence across all tiers. FRC remains steadfast in our commitment to fostering fiscal discipline and ensuring public resources are managed with transparency and accountability for sustainable development and economic growth. Let me at this point pay special tribute to His Excellency our President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, for his courage. For me, it's with a lot of sentiment because I've operated at that level. I've been a vice chairman at the local government level. I've been an elected chairman twice at the local government level. I've served my people. I've been the chairman of All Southeast Local Government Forum, ARGON. I've also been the National Legal Advisor for 3 years. At the continental level, I've operated as the Deputy Secretary General of United Cities and Local Government Africa, UCLGA. So I'm coming with an in-depth knowledge of what it is like at the local government level. For me, especially, it's with a lot of sentiment I say most of the problems we're having, particularly in security, and some of the challenges we have economically stems from the lack of complete disregard of the local government system. I make bold to say that Mr. President have taken bold steps, and I also want to join him in commending the National Parliament for their courage. It only takes courage to push for even what we are discussing today. Without the courage of Mr. President, we'll be discussing this. So I congratulate him, and I also say that it's now left for us Nigerians to take the bull by the horn to encourage the local government system. Because the judgment is already before us. What is holding it? We all have to come together and support the government to ensure that not just implementing the Supreme Court judgment, but we also try to build capacity. Because over the years, because of the complete abandonment of the local government system, there is also a lack of human capacity at that level. I thank the organizers of today's event for what we are doing in trying to review what is happening there, to also see how we can support in capacity development, because sending the funds alone will not be enough. We need to build their capacity. 1 year ago, the Supreme Court delivered a landmark judgment granting financial autonomy to local government and reaffirming the imperative of free and fair elections at the local government level. This historic judgment was not merely a legal milestone. For me, it is also a huge democratic bold step, and it's a huge economic step in infrastructure development. I will not want to bore you with my personal experience, but I can remember as a local government operator, I was able to take on some key infrastructure project routes. I remember the day I gave out over 21 transformers to communities. I did the electricity project. By the way, the local government I'm talking about is Owerri West local government in Imo State. So, when I see what is going on now, I wonder, is this what it should be? So, Mr. President have done his bit. Financial autonomy granted to local government will empower them to deliver essential service, education, healthcare, rural infrastructure, agri support, and a lot. Because indeed, I can remember when Argon, we went out under national program for MPI immunization. I remember then that we shared ourselves, we toured the whole country, and that at the end of what we did, there was complete eradication, as at that time, of the disease then. Then I remember Dr. Misdera Awashika was the director of MPI. Local government can achieve a lot for our country. We shouldn't just cast away the baby with the bathwater by saying that they share money and go, they live in town. It's not true. Some local government operators meant very well for this country, and they are ready to work, and they are ready to build their capacity development. So I'm pleased to be here. Fiscal Responsibility Commission, we are very pleased to partner with all agencies that are ready, and we are going into the local government also to support in development of their capacity. But I must state that with my experience, with the financial autonomy and political autonomy which will come, we also have to guide them in areas of borrowing, in areas of spending, because this is also one area that if they are not properly tutored before now, they may run into the same storm some other tiers of government are going through. So, having served as a two-time chairman and deputy chairman of local government and at various levels, Argon operative, I'm deeply passionate about the fiscal renaissance of local government councils. I believe that strengthening fiscal governance at this level is critical to transforming lives and fostering human development across Nigeria. I make bold to say that if we get to try it at the local government, part of the insecurity we suffer today will not hold. Today's high policy conversation truly provides a vital platform for dialogue, critical reflection, and knowledge sharing on the program, progress, and gaps in implementing the Supreme Court's decision. Hence, I urge all stakeholders to seize this opportunity to support Mr. President to generate actionable recommendations. Let it not just be like other talk shops, and commit to sustained advocacy and implementation of that judgment. The goal of local government autonomy is not autonomy for its own sake, but autonomy that should deliver tangible results for our citizens at that level, because that's the most important level. Conversations like this are very critical and vital, but I make bold to say in fact, it's very urgent, especially at this time, where inclusive governance, transparency, and citizen-centered development are paramount. In closing, I once more thank you, Excellencies. I commend Agora Policy, CFTPI, Cable, and MacArthur Foundation for their unwavering commitment to transparency, accountability, and good governance. Our commission, Fiscal Responsibility Commission, looks forward to working with you, to collaborating with all stakeholders to build a more transparent, accountable, and prosperous Nigeria. Thank you, Excellency, for your time, and God bless Nigeria. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairman of the Fiscal Responsibility Commission. Honorable Minister, just before you go, please, can we just take 1 minute for a group photograph just before you go? Please, sir. The chair, those in front, please, can you just come up. Let's take a quick photo before His Excellency, the Honorable Minister of Finance, leaves. Photo, okay. Please, can we, yes, up. Yes. As advised by the photographer. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. At least we're done and dusted with that, but we really have to continue with the items today. Next, we will definitely be getting into scholarly reflections, what the Agora policy has titled Reflections of the 5 Decades of Local Government Reforms in Nigeria. And to offer that scholarly reflection on 50 years, we welcome a man, of course, who has studied and shaped this subject from every angle. And when I mean every angle, political science, federalism, decentralization, and governance. He's a professor at the University of Ibadan, a fellow of the Pan-African Scientific Research Council, and one of Nigeria's most cited scholars on fiscal federalism. Please, with a warm round of applause, welcome Professor Remi Emmanuel Ayede to take us through these reflections for a few minutes. Please keep the applause coming. And after this, we still have in the item a panel session, just like the minister mentioned earlier. Thank you very much, Prof.
Thank you. Now, 5 decades is a long time, but it's also a short time. Because in looking at local government reforms, I describe it as Nigeria's unfinished journey. and I will be focusing mainly on the milestones so that I do not bore you with too many details. Now, good morning, distinguished guests, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. Local government, of course, as Deborah has said, is the closest tier of government to the people, and its success or failure affects the daily lives of Nigerians. The local government, of course, is consistently regarded as the third tier, and it has undergone a series of dramatic reforms since 1976, even though we can trace the local government system to the colonial era. Now, the debate that is going on right now is provoked by the July 2024 ruling of the Supreme Court decision on local government financial autonomy, which creates a pivotal moment that has put the searchlight on local government. But a critical survey published early in 2023 says Nigerians have very little trust in their local governments because local government has performed below expectation. In fact, only 6.4% of Nigerians thinks local government can be relied upon for any kind of service at all. Now, this reflection is important because there are lessons that we can learn from the achievements, setbacks, and also we can also chart future directions for local government. So reflection is not just to recount history, but to extract lessons for better governance and service delivery. Before 1976, which is a major milestone in the reform of local government in Nigeria, the foundation of local government was set in the colonial era under the indirect rule system, where native authorities were the main anchors of local government. By the time we approached independence, the different regions took different parts in terms of how they conceive of local government. But in general, there was no single local government system across the country. So the first thing that was done by the 1976 reform is to standardize a nationwide local government system and introduce the local government as the third tier of Nigeria's three-tier federal system. Now, this standardized local government system created some challenges. For instance, it merged villages while splitting cities, often leading to fragmented governance. Yet, the aim was to democratize local government and to strengthen local government by making 5% of federation pool resources available to local government. These reforms, of course, were consolidated in the 1979 Constitution, which officially listed local government as the third tier. But more than that, it guaranteed what it calls a democratically elected government at the local government level. But that constitution, of course, did not provide sufficient clarification in terms of the relationship between the federal government and the state government on local government matters. And what then happened was that while retaining functions of local government and giving the state houses of assembly the powers to define how those functions are carried out, details of legislation was left unattended to. So when the Second Republic collapsed and the military came, they set up a committee to look at local government reforms as started with the 1976 reforms, because they noticed that under that Second Republic, many states created local government arbitrarily, and the number of local government increased phenomenally. So the Dasuki Committee was to help streamline that process and create a basis and criteria for reviewing local government at intervals based on certain criteria, including the minimum size of population. But that reform itself was problematic in terms of its implementation until 1987, when the Political Bureau was set up to define a system of government for Nigeria under the Babangida government. Now, the Bureau paid particular attention to local governments and suggested a three-tier kind of local government, beginning from the neighborhood level, where you have neighbors conscious of their own needs coming together to discuss and passing it on to a higher level, which they describe as the development areas, or normally the natural communities of people or villages. And then, of course, the local government were then supposed to be the apex government at the local level, coordinating neighborhoods and communities to achieve local needs and aspirations. But that was never implemented until 1988, when the Phillips reform was conducted on the Nigerian public service. But what the Phillips reform suggested for local government is to focus on the nature of the bureaucracy that exists at the local government level. And so it defines the structure of administrative process in local governments, especially concerning recruitment, promotion, and discipline of local government officials, and gave the Local Government Service Commission at the state level the powers to play a very vital role in local government. And of course, it also makes a distinction between political office holders and career civil servants to ensure that there's some professionalism at the local government level. This was the situations throughout the period of the military era, where at some moments local governments, democratically elected local governments were abolished, at other times elections were conducted, and additional local governments were created. And you find a situation where the very fine ideas about local government were implemented in a very haphazard manner, and these inconsistencies eroded democratic norms. Under the 1999 Constitution, of course, most of the content of the reforms were consolidated in the Constitution, including the joint state local government account. And the names of local government for the first time were listed in the Constitution, and provisions were made to ensure that accountability of local governments is guaranteed. But there were also several loopholes that were not defined in terms of the role of state government in conducting local government elections, the existence of CX, and the rules and guidelines that should guide the operation of CX. These loopholes created major problems, such that we are now faced with a situation where the debates are that many state governors ignored the constitutional provisions of the democratic local governments, appointed caretaker committees, and refrained from holding regular elections. All this meant that the aspirations of the constitutions and the fine provisions of many committees and reports that preceded the 1999 Constitution were never fulfilled. And so there's a persistent debate over autonomy, funding, and effectiveness of local governments. Now, recent judicial interventions did not only provoke the current debate, it also shows the challenges that comes with the reform of local government. Now, the Supreme Court has ruled that caretaker committees and the withholding of funds by state governments are not acceptable, and that allocations must flow directly to local government. So local governments without elected officials will not receive funds from the federal government. But we must remember that when President Obasanjo was in government, local government revenue were directly paid to local government until the state government went to court and get the support of the court that that money should be paid to the local government joint account. So we have had this experience of when monies were paid directly to local government, and the one we are aspiring to happen with the recent Supreme Court judgment. What happened then is worth noting. The first is that we had two major issues. First is what we call the non-correspondence problem. Local governments had money, but they were not supported by accountability structures that created problems in terms of what those monies were used for. And as the former chairman, two-time chairman of local government pointed out, people really wondered what local governments were doing with their money. He mentioned about absentee chairman, which he said is not the general rule, but there was also the question of local government failing to pay teachers, primary school teachers' salaries, and you find that recently also with the local government in the FCT. And there was also the issue of local government organizing to create a political party to challenge state governors and determine which state governor will return. So these are major problems that we also still need to look at. Probably that's why state governors hesitate to obey the court order. Now, more important is also that it is not only the Supreme Court's decision that state houses of assembly have also made laws to undercut the decision. For instance, the Anambra State law requires local government allocations to state government accounts, even when allocations to state government accounts, even when they receive it. So we also need to deal with that, think about that. Then financial and administrative weaknesses. Local government, of course, have very low capacity for revenue generation. Well, there's no evidence that they have low capacity for corruption. And the other important point is also that these local governments are fragmented, and we need to deal with the question of villages being merged and cities being split, which is very disruptive of effective urban governance and planning. Then, of course, the important point about democratic deficits. CX are partisan, they are underfunded, and leading to non-credible elections. How do we make governors prioritize legitimacy over control of local government? Lessons learned so far. Yeah, autonomy is very essential. Without financial and administrative autonomy, local government remain ineffective. There's need for strong institutions at local government level, skilled personnel, which are crucial for service delivery. So capacity building is important. Then community participation is the live wire of democracy, and sustainable development happens when communities are involved in decision making. Absent that, local government cannot be said to be local. And so we have these reports, we have these decisions, we have all kinds of ideas about how to strengthen local government, but they must not be allowed to gather dust. Implementation is very critical, but implementation cannot happen without political commitment at both national and state level. What it then means is that we're happy the minister has made the point that they are given dialogue and negotiation a very important place. And the Agora policy notes we made the point that without negotiation, no government would get compliance with that decision. And it is good that dialogue, persuasion, and consultation will go on in determining the kind of local government Nigeria wants. Then, of course, this will involve amendments of laws, probably including also the Constitution, to safeguard local government independence, including the conduct of elections, this strengthening CEC or reinforcing their independence will be very crucial. And finally, I think it's important for us to revisit the political bureau's recommendation of a three-tiered model of local government, so that we can have local government that speak right from the neighborhood up through the wards to the local government level. This will be very critical as we look towards implementing further reforms. This will be supported also by the setting up of accountability framework with anti-corruption mechanisms like public audits and citizens' oversight. So over 50 years, reform is still at a critical junction. We have seen a mixed result of progress in terms of structural frameworks, but predatory state politics and weak accountability continues to endure. So systemic change demands that citizens are mobilized in order to achieve a stronger local government system, and we need to also define clearer intergovernmental rules and look about autonomy in terms of institutionalization rather than an administrative matter. So strengthening local government is not just an administrative task, it is key to national development, peace, and social justice. Local democracy is not just about election, it's about empowering communities to own their own development. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Professor. Please, another round of applause for him for that deep reflection of 5 decades of local governance reforms in Nigeria. Thank you again, Prof. A few speakers here have definitely said a few things around citizens' participation, that all of us need to be invested in local governance. You know, it also baffles me when you talk about participation engagement in Nigeria that more people vote on a reality show eviction night than perhaps even local government elections. So how many of us here, even in the room, are very invested in what happens in our municipal councils, in our area councils, and we really say, oh, we want to strengthen local councils. How can we strengthen them when all of us here in the room, and even beyond here in the room, do not have that interest? Because sometimes we need more than reforms. Reforms is one touted word, reforms, but we really need more than it. We need vitamins, we need proteins, and most especially political will to do all of that. So thank you very much, Prof, and thank you to all the speakers even before you. I want to quickly acknowledge Dr. Tunji Olokpa, the Chairman, Federal Civil Service Commission. Thank you very much, sir, for your presence today. And we'll be moving briefly into a drama performance because we have to give our minds and hearts over to the stage at this time, because through theater, perhaps they will be making us look at, or they would be exploring, I would want to see what they will perform. They will be exploring the triumphs and tragedies of perhaps Nigeria's local governance story. Of course, drama looks like a mirror to reflect and maybe also laugh at ourselves sometimes before we return to policy prescriptions in a moment. So let's give it up for Aroja Royal Theatre.
Let them use local government money. Build development for local government. Not some vacations for federal men. You're asking for too much.
My people. From this days, we won't build today. We talk and go. My people. Let local voices and youth come together and come back. We will shape and plan our dreams and our life, my people. My people, my sister. Autonomy, no be grammar at all. Una here? We hear. The truth. So make you all gather. Make we dey share. See, the point now be say, I want to make our people. Make we dey speak out loud. Make this budget. Make them dey rise. And most of all, make the local talents them. Make them begin to shine.
Thank you to the Aroja Theatre for, awakening our senses and telling us, no be talk, we go chop. We don't too talk. It's time for us to do the work. Thank you very much again for that performance. Just before we go into the panel session very quickly, let me invite Dr. Tunji Olokpa, the Chairman, Federal Civil Service, Professor Tunji Olokpa, the Chairman, Federal Civil Service Commission, to just give us a few words. Then after that, we get into the much-awaited panel session. Please, a round of applause for Professor.
Thank you very much. I'm delighted to be here. I missed the original conversation, but I'm happy to get a bit of context from the delivery by my colleague, Professor Ayede. There are a number of very topical issues around local governance, and I'd rather listen more. But I'd like to flag one or two. The sense that, in practical terms, that Nigerians have had over the years, over some decades now, is that local governments have operated suboptimally, almost in virtual absence in that space. And in its place, self-help and community galvanized service delivery arrangements have proven to become coping mechanism for the people. So my reform sense is that while revitalizing and strengthening local government system is a reform imperative, but we must, I saw a bit of that in the delivery by Professor Aide. The question for us is, how do we harness the strength of subsidiarity principle to connect the community structures that people have relied on with the state's structures in a way that is mutually reinforcing. The tendency is that when funds now flow into local government, connecting other available resources become atomized, and people get discouraged, and those self-help initiatives keep weakening. Some of the traditional rulers, modern traditional rulers, are doing incredible work at the community level. A lot of the community-based structures are doing well. Vigilantes have proven to be strong, mechanism for security, even far more trusted than the state structures. Waste disposal within the neighborhood arrangement have proven to be a lot more reliable. So for me, going forward, it's a question of the local governance model that will not just stand on the feet of the state structure alone. And I think some of the states have done good work in this. I've visited a couple of states while I was in NIPS. We did a study of Kaduna State, and we had situations where, some bottom-up structure leveraging the World Bank lifters framework have, created structures where town halls and some structures are, creating an accountability mechanism that is holding local government in check, even for planning purposes. The other point that I like to make that comes quickly to me is the fact that the political economy dimension to the reform that we're doing. I get the sense that state governors are not committed to the reform because they are looking at it from the political angle. That the federal is moving into that space to erode the credibility of governors. So consequently, irrespective of what is being achieved at constitutional and legal, the governors seems to almost like unite to almost continue to frustrate this arrangement. And that is why I love the conclusion that was made. I don't know whether by Professor Aide or somebody who made that dialogue. It's almost like we need to get a stakeholder consensus on what models works. And that raises critical question regarding, should local government be taught here? And what should be the nexus with the state? If they are independent and they become a platform of contestation between the federal and the state, would it ever be formed? So those are critical questions. Those two just came to mind. And since I'm given the opportunity, I thought I should flag that. But I'm delighted to be here. I want to learn more. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor. Please, another round of applause for him. He's asked two critical questions, of course, which I think that the next item, which is the panel session, may also likely look at. We've had a lot of insights, deep reflections, speeches here, but to bring the insights home, we move now to our panel session, and I'll also be stepping into the role of the moderator for this crucial conversation. Of course, the topic is a year after the Supreme Court's ruling, progress, challenges, and pathways. And we have a distinguished set of panelists who bring experience, a sprinkle of activism, academic rigor, as well as policy depth to this conversation. And let me introduce them one by one. Representing the national president of ALGON, of course, ALGON is a grassroots governance champion, an engineer turned local government advocate, currently the national president of ALGON, but is here represented by Honorable Akala Samuel Gajere. Please, a warm welcome for him as he comes on stage. From the heart of Nigeria's civil society is a woman who's championed women's rights and empowerment for decades. She is the Secretary General of RAPA, Madam Hajia Sadatu Madi. Please, another round of applause for her. This name is familiar, of course, with youth governance circles and one of the architects of the Not Too Young to Run campaign. He is the Executive Secretary of YAGA Africa, Mr. Samson Itodo. He joins us here too on stage. Please, your applause should have a bit of vitamins and proteins. We are not done yet. Or a bit of reforms. That applause needs reforms too. And from the front lines of integrity and accountability, an anti-corruption specialist and former EFCC strategist, now leading the Center for Fiscal Transparency and Public Integrity, is Dr. Umar Yakubu. He joins us here on stage. And finally, he joins us online from Ekiti. We welcome, of course, an economist, the Honorable Commissioner for Finance and Economic Development, and Chairman of the Forum of Finance Commissioners, Mr. Kintude Oyebode. Mr. Oyebode, I hope you are online now. You can hear me. If you can, I would appreciate that you say, I can hear you, Nancy. I hope he's there. Media. Okay, while we wait for him to join.
I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, very good. Thank you. We can also see you. Welcome, sir. All right, I think I'll begin. Okay, let me wait till they take this off the stage. So I think I would like to start, of course, with ALGON, which is the umbrella body for the local government areas in Nigeria. So I would like to start with you, Honorable. ALGON is in court to seek the implementation of the Supreme Court ruling on direct allocation to LGs. And I find out an irony. Your Supreme Court has given you a ruling. You are going back again to the court to ensure implementation. What is the status of implementation of this, of the landmark decision by the highest court of the land? And why do you think that going to court is the way out? Quickly. And let me also say that it would be nice for us to answer very briefly because we have less than an hour for this session. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much. I sit here to represent the national president of ALGON, who would have wished to be here, but unfortunately he couldn't make it. So I will just try to respond on behalf of the president and indeed ALGON. First, I'd like to say clearly that Algon is not in court. We couldn't have gone to court because ad initio we never went to court. The federal government went to court and got judgment. The federal government is in custody of the funds. And of course, the federal government is actually supposed to be the one to implement the Supreme Court ruling. So as to the status of implementation, after the judgment, the federal government, in its wisdom, decided to inaugurate a presidential implementation committee where Algon is also a member, the NUT, the NOLGIV, the NGF, Governors Forum, and other Ministry of Finance and other critical ministry as to the matter were members of the committee. And as at that committee level, a lot of issues came up as to implementation, as to issues that has to do with primary education, health, and other critical services at the local government. You recall that in the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, it clearly states that the local government will participate in education. It does not clearly stipulate the level of participation, but at Algon level and as local government, we are fully in charge of payment of 100% salary of our workforce. And of course, we also provide infrastructure at the local government level. The UBEC through SUBEC also make intervention to the local government. So those issues came up. The union too also raised some concerns as to regards prompt payment of their workers' salaries. So a subcommittee was further constituted at that level to reconcile those areas, which were promptly reconciled. Algon agreed to almost all the terms of implementation, and as we speak today, we have signed up for implementation since last year. And there were conversations about opening an account with CBN. We have met with CBN and streamlining all that is needed. You recall that the local government is an entity of government created by the Constitution of the Federal Republic. So there won't be any issues as to opening an account because it's not a private account that you subject a lot of... so they are basically at our end. We are ready. Algon has also taken steps to also prepare her members in terms of training, in terms of budgeting issues, in terms of accountability issues, and all of that. So at our level at Algon, we are indeed very ready, but I'd like to also quickly say that Algon remains indebted to Nigerians and organizations like Agora, who have always put this issue on the fore. And to say that this conversation is not about local government administrators, it is about Nigerians and the development of our communities. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So, let me come over to the Honorable Commissioner who joins us virtually. The Supreme Court's ruling on direct LGA allocations seem very clear-cut and straightforward. Yet the implementation has been anything but straightforward. From your vantage point, I'd like to know why this is the case. And are states opposed to financial autonomy for local government areas? Or are there deeper administrative as well as political complexities at play that we might not know and would like to understand? Over to you, Mr. Oyebode.
So thank you very much, Nancy. I think that as before I speak, Agora for bringing this dialogue together. Please confirm you can hear me speaking to myself. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, sir.
Okay, so I think very importantly, that the first is there's section 162 of the Constitution, and that section provides for JAC, right? And so there needs to be some clarity as to what does that do to the state of it's maintain a special account called the State Joint Local Government Account, into which shall be paid all allocations to the local government. And so we're going to do that, and be sure that we're operating in line with the Constitution. I think on the administrative side, there are a few things to be considered. For me, the primary issue has always been how do the local governments pay their obligations? As of today, because again, we've put the cart before the horse, in my opinion. I think what we should have first was to have first even agreed, done a census, right? Reviewed the revenue sharing formula, both horizontal and vertical, right? And then we can have a full implementation administratively of payments to local governments. As we have it today, there are many local councils able to pay their salaries if they have allocations sent directly to them, because the indices for distribution have not been updated and do not reflect the burden of governance that those local councils carry. So I think for me, my first real point here is states are not opposed to autonomy. In my state in Ekiti, we actually augment local governments on a monthly basis. And that's apart from the 10% of IGR that goes to the JAC account, as prescribed by the Constitution. So I think it's presumptuous to say, governors or states are opposed to local government autonomy. I think there are deeper issues that we haven't resolved. Issues around even the fiscal stability of these local councils, right? Why have we put the cart before the horse? Why haven't we said, let's focus on reviewing the vertical and horizontal formula for revenue distribution? You have local councils today who can pay their salaries. You have obligations on universal basic education. If you are going to change the financial administration process, you need to go back to things like the UBEC Act and say, how do we deal directly with local governments if we don't want states to intervene in the process? The rep of the Algon chairman has said here as well that, look, there are issues around basic education, primary healthcare, where there's no clarity as to who does what, right? The moment you decouple this completely, some of the indices that Debbie raised in her remarks, indices around maternal mortality, indices around vaccine coverage, etc., how do you then fund some of these? How do you ensure ongoing obligations are funded? And that's the work I think the committee has been trying to do. But it's important to note that a lot of the resolutions post the Supreme Court judgment that have been implemented, and for example, one of the states today is in court simply because the allocation to its local councils were stopped because in the opinion of the Attorney General of the Federation, that state erred in conducting local government elections, and that election was seen as a termination of a validly elected local government. Of course, the state's counter opinion to that is there's a judgment that had terminated that LGA administration and the elections were in order. That matter is now before the Supreme Court. But in compliance with the earlier judgment of the Supreme Court, FAC had even stopped payments of LGA funds to that state. Now, as to whether you can open accounts with central bank or not, I think that's an administrative conversation, right? For me, I often wonder, central bank is the banker of last resort to the federal government. I don't know to what extent central bank can manage relationships across 774 local governments or even 36 states. I don't see a reason why local governments should be forced or mandated to open accounts with CBN. It should be on an individual basis. If we're talking about autonomy, then also Algon cannot say to 774 local governments, go and open accounts in CBN. My local government in Ikole should reserve the right to bank with whoever it wants, as is anyone's local government across the country. So I think it's just the contradict. Some of these things, even when we're discussing, we see that our understanding of it has contradictions. And as the Honorable Minister has said, this is a journey, and we've started that journey. I think we've made significant progress, and we wouldn't have made that progress if there was no collaboration between the states and the federal government. So for us, it's really about ensuring that there's real fiscal federalism, but more importantly, that all the unintended consequences of this should first be resolved before we can implement this fully. And again, just a last point, Nancy, I think even if the Supreme Court has it's within anyone's right to go back to the court to say we want, whether it's not Algon or not. I know some incorporated trustees of Algon, which is unknown to us in any event, went to, and we have made our submission, as subnationals in that matter. So that matter today is sub judice. So there's not much one can say, and we'll wait for the Supreme Court to resolve one way or the other. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Oyebode. Of course, you've raised a few sticky issues here, which I think would require response, and that response may also come from the Algon National President's representative. So just hold that, sir. I'll come back to you in a bit, because you've said a lot of things. But let me move over to something. As a lawyer and a democracy advocate, and perhaps even you listening to what Mr. Oyebode has just said, what are the implications for a country, failing to enforce a direct ruling by its highest court? Specifically, how do you interpret, of course, the ruling second dimension, that LGAs must be governed by democratically elected officials? And what's your assessment of the elections held since? Because I think for organizations such as yours, you've called it shambles, or perhaps is it a step forward? And I'd also like you, perhaps in a few seconds, to respond to Mr. Oyebode's submission, because I was monitoring your body language when he was speaking, so you could respond to that quickly.
Well, thank you very much. Quite a handful of questions, but first let me thank Oga Waziri for this meeting and this discussion. So let me attempt 3 of those questions that you asked. I think first, we're a constitutional democracy, and in a constitutional democracy, judicial review is a cardinal principle that ensures, the rule of law, and ensures that, this settlement that we have agreed, which is enshrined in our constitution, is respected. And so if the Supreme Court of the land has delivered a ruling on a particular matter, it behoves on other agencies of state to comply. And there's no reason why they shouldn't comply with the ruling of the Supreme Court, because failure to do so is a manifestation of democratic erosion. And it clearly demonstrates that we have no regard, for the rule of law, because when scholars like Max Weber and co talk about the rule of law, is that everybody is subject to the rule of law. So if the court has decided, I expect that the institutions should, but it's just the level of impunity that, permeates every aspect of our national life. To the second question about the elections, I don't know if the slides can be up just to respond to this. So if you look at, how many states had democratically elected administration before the Supreme Court, there were only 14 states that had democratically elected local councils, only 14 out of 36 and the FCT. After the Supreme Court, let's go to the next slide. If you see, the entire country went green because all the other states rushed to conduct local government election. In fact, in 2024, we classified the month of October as the super month of local government elections in the country, because all the local government, all the states rushed to conduct elections. But the question is not in the conduct of the elections, it's the quality of the elections. And as at last year and up till the Lagos elections, it was our conclusion at Yaga Africa that all those elections were a travesty of electoral democracy and they don't meet the electoral integrity test. There were 3 major things that characterized those. What we saw was allocation of votes in most of those elections, that the CX and their officials would sit and just allocate votes
And in actually most of the states, and Professor Remy is here, whom we've been working closely with, in most of the states, the ruling party in the states swept all, the seats. In the recent local Lagos elections, it was the APC that took all the seats, and in the count wards, out of 374, there was only one seat. 376, yes, there was only one seat that the opposition actually took. So when you look at those elections, they were a travesty in their own respect. The second point was that there was non-compliance with the provisions of the Electoral Act. The Electoral Act is very clear that local government elections shall be bound by the procedure established in the Act for the conduct of area councils in the FCT. That's what Section 150 said. It was an attempt by the National Assembly to reform and strengthen the quality of elections at the local government level. But there was debate as to whether the National Assembly has the constitutional competence to legislate on local government elections. It does have. So if you take a case like Lagos, when they conducted the elections, it was just 14 days to the end of the tenure of the incumbent. In fact, that act itself is illegal, because if you follow the time frame established by the Constitution, it says elections shall hold not earlier than 150 days and no later than 30 days. There's a reason why 30 days is put as the upper limit, so that in the event of runoffs, where maybe there's a national disaster, natural disaster, there's actually time. But they went ahead, conducted the elections, despite attempt to draw their attention that they were flouting provisions of the Electoral Act. So you see that level of impunity. And lastly, and Professor Yemi mentioned, is what does local government mean to the governors? Which is where I deviate to a large extent with my brother Akino, which is where I land. I think that the governors continue to approach this discussion as an attempt to assert their control over local governments. They see local governments as a political tool, and that's why they are not willing to have conversations about what is necessary for ensuring that there's some level of independence at the local government level.
Thank you very much, Samson. Deep, really food for thoughts there, and as we go on, we'll definitely look at that. But let me come over to Haji Ahmadi. It's almost said, and we've said it here repeatedly this morning, that democracy begins at the grassroots. And in Nigeria, of course, the grassroots are the municipals or the local government areas. Yet this local government suffers from the chronic underrepresentation of women, of youth, and other marginalized groups. From your extensive work at RAPA, what's your assessment of inclusion in local governance, and what concrete steps are needed to close those equity gaps?
Thank you, Nancy, and please forgive my voice. I have a very bad cold. I want to also join Samson and others in thanking Agora Policy for this conversation, and most importantly for thinking that there is a niche that's so important in terms of the understanding and the perception of what reforms even mean. The reforms around the fiscal autonomy of local governments, the reforms around our elections, the integrity that defines our elections, compliance with the rule of law, all come down to two things, in my humble view and in the work we have seen. We take it from the angle of two issues. First is citizen voices. Why do we concentrate on citizen voices? Because it is within that ambit that then you speak of inclusive democracy. It's not about just the Electoral Act, but who is in the game? What agency do they bring to the credibility, or what agency do they exercise over the outcomes of our elections? Second is about who calls the shots within political parties, because all elections happen within the ambit of your belonging to a political party or something. Organizations as people are now want to see happening in the country. Now, who is in the political party and controlling the shots. For us, women in both cases have taken a bit of a rough shot, which every attempt is being made to address. The other thing that I want to attach to voices is when you come to elections, on election days, it's a given. Women defy rains, defy everything. Women have gone to labor rooms from election centers to put to bed and come back and elect. So is there a payback for you as a citizen and being a woman or a vulnerable person? We've had persons with disabilities who have been disenfranchised because they cannot access polling stations or polling points, and their voices are, of course, and those of others marginalized. So when you bring this and apply it to the issue of local governance and the court ruling, we celebrate as the underdogs of those communities. Because probably what it says to us, or perception, and I bring you also the results from a research, 2024, where we went out to check how are people relating with the reforms around local governance and seeing where they fall. Because in every policy, in every law, you must be able to locate yourself. Where am I in it? What do I benefit? What do I contribute? And the perception we got was 51% of Nigerians had limited knowledge of even the concern to participate. And it became higher when we applied it to women and persons with disabilities. It came to 66%, meaning that we need to even make people aware what are reforms, what are their benefits, what roles do we play, and I like what was said earlier this morning, the clarity of roles. So women, other vulnerable persons, and marginalized groups need to understand what are the roles they play, what is the benefit they bring to the table, and how do we do that? Where does it start? It starts from the policy formulation and then into the implementation. How many Nigerians, I don't recall, Waziri, we had a conversation around this. What can we do to even determine the views of Nigerians concerning the pushback from the state governors and the role of Algon, which is, again, something else that needs discussion, with all due respect. But the point is this: we must find a way that a clarity of what we're even talking about is gotten. Now, just to put it in practical terms, when we say voices and who is in control when it comes to the elections and who decides really how we, because we have been talking in this room, talking about a structure of implementation, speaking to roles and responsibilities. But how do you determine that without the voices of the people? And if that is to happen, who needs to play? One of the things we think should be pushing is that local government election, we need to even look at it. Is it going to remain what it is? Or because of the financing, the capacity deficits, the trust deficits and everything, do we need to even think of how to do local government elections all over? Different from maybe what we are doing at state and local, because the voices of the people matter. And for that reason, we in RAPA and other civil society organizations have put our weight, one, behind increasing the numbers of women in terms of playing a role in how policies are shaped and in the role we play in governance. Two, we are also concerned and we are working in terms of drilling down so that the voices at the level of local government understand what is going to happen. So there is more work to be done. One, to get knowledge. Two, to get buy-in. And three, to close the trust deficit gap that is informing the lack of knowledge or the lack of interest. Because there's apathy. People are saying, they will just come and do what they are used to doing. At the end of the month, they open the room, dust the table, and divide the money. But that's not it. This ruling does not want that. That ruling gives power to the people, and their voices and their inputs matter. And we have to find a way to capture their voices, to get them to contribute, and to also hold those elected officers accountable. Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Dr. Yakubu, your organization has been at the forefront of working with ICPC and other institutions to enhance transparency and accountability in local government areas. Madam Madi just raised an important question, calling even the character of Algon to question, you know. So the Algon rep here has a lot to answer for. I would like you to also take a look at that in that context, because what she also called for is around the accountability and transparency of that system, which we also call Algon. Why is the initiative that you're pursuing timely? And what exactly are you doing to shift the culture of opacity in this crucial tier of government? It was also raised here, I think it was Samson that said, it depends on who the governor wants. You know, if you're a local government chair and you're against the governor, definitely you will not come back. You know, and Mr. Yobode is still on this call, so I would also like you to answer that when I come back to you. But over to you, Dr. Yakubu.
All right, thank you. That's about 3 questions you just asked me now, and I don't know how many minutes I have. Okay, first of all, I would like to thank you for organizing this program.
Please, can you put on your mic?
Is it on now? Okay. Thank you for inviting me. That's a bunch of about 3 questions you're asking. I'm sure I have like just 3 minutes, so I'll try to bunch all of them on. First of all, at the center, we recognize we're Nigerians, so we recognize that we know our problems. And transparency has been shown as a better tool for corruption prevention rather than all the running around after the corruption has happened. Also, it's well documented what goes on at the local government level. It has been said today so many times about how the state governors or the political actors have hijacked the local governments. But from one of the keynote speakers earlier on from the British High Commission, she made 5 points. And point number 4 was on strong safeguards for transparency and accountability. And somehow that is what we have done as a center civil society. But because of our nature, we needed some form of enforcement power, which is why we partnered with the ICPC, being led Mr. Bakori, he's seated right there, representing the chairman, where we developed a framework across 5 thematic areas. Basically, in a nutshell, because this will take a long time, fiscal transparency. Somebody from the World Bank I heard us speaking about the kind of debt you go to borrow from public institutions, from banks. All this has have to happen. But before the methodology, the spirit
recording stopped.
The spirit behind the methodology is we have made several commitments to the United Nations Convention Against Corruption, to the Open Government Platform, to our constitution say we should combat corruption. We have the Freedom of Information Act. We have so many things. So we drew these principles by law that were mandated to have this information in the public domain proactively, and need that law to also support this. But if you follow the law, they will not tell you, okay, we'll publish in the newspapers when they don't know, but not everybody reads newspapers. So we are banking on the NIDA law to say publish on your websites, because every public institution should have a website. And these categories of information, 29 indicators in number, should be on your website proactively by law, international commitments and national laws. So under fiscal transparency, we have about 9 sub-variables: your budget, how much you are allocated, how much you generated, how much you spend on recurrent expenditure, how much you spend on capital expenditure, your debt level to the banks, your debt level to other organizations should be proactively disclosed. So once they do this, you find out that those are the areas where you see all those discrepancies. The next variable we ask for is open procurement, because 73% of public sector corruption is through procurement. So publish all your details of your advertisements, publish all the details of the contractors who are those doing contracts, and this is being done even at the federal level and the state level. Then the last one, your procurement implementation report. We don't want to be seeing every year you are buying ACs, buying cars, ACs and cars, because there's nobody checking all these things. And that is why we even brought in the ICPC to look at that. The third variable we looked at is human resources, which Auntie would enjoy is and the women focus. So you publish information on your sex distribution, how many male you have, how many female we have, because there's a lot of discrepancy. Of course, we know that's the area too. We have what they call ghost workers. Sometimes they just put numbers and paying people salaries. You don't know how many people they have. So once you have that, your sex distribution and people with disability, that's another point, because there's a law, our disability act is 5%, so they must publish that too. So then citizens engagement, town hall meetings. I'm wrapping up. Then publication of annual report. Then the final one is your control of corruption implementation report. You can have all the policies you have, but you must have a mechanism that how you are controlling corruption regarding your audits, your everything, your policies, whistleblower, anti-corruption, anti-bribery policy, and all these things should be proactively in the public domain. So for not publishing, the ICPC now will ask questions why you are not publishing these things, and they will do enforce their powers on why you are not publishing it and do what they need to do. Now, when you publish it now on the other area, that's a form of citizens engagement and feedback to citizens, and you'll see that they're involved. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Yakubu. All right, I think it will be time. Let me come back to Mr. Oyebode. And this question is to you, at least to respond to some of the, I don't want to say bullets, that have come from Abuja over to you there in Ekiti. But you have said, of course, you opined earlier that states are not entirely opposed to local government reforms, but rather you are concerned about the current approach and the implications. Of course, you raised issues around YCBN accounts, the financial stability of LGAs. The question to you right now will be, what recalibrations might be necessary to make this autonomy both functional and sustainable? And I mentioned earlier on, and I think it was also Samson that said it here, or is it even Dr. Yakubu now, that he who dictates, he who plays the piper dictates the tune. So if a governor does not like a local government chair, he will remove him, and he will not see the light of day. So how do you respond to this? Very quickly, Mr. Ibode.
Thanks, Nancy. So first, don't attempt to mediate between Samson and I. My brother, so I have to take him on his comments. I think first, there are a number of assumptions that governors are opposed to this. Samson speaks about impunity. I wonder who he addresses that point to. The states are not the ones who implement judgments. The states have made their position clear. It's up to the country, to do what is best for it. I think our point has been around the things to think about, so that the entire nation doesn't grind to a halt. If we decide to go in a certain direction, so be it. Ours is primarily advisory, and to help manage some of the challenges that come from this implementation. I do not, my skill set is in finance. I do not pretend to be a political scientist. So those who monitor elections are better suited to speak on the electoral process and how to improve that process. But the truth of the matter, to just respond to you directly, is that elections are, all politics is local, right? So again, a local government chairman doesn't operate in isolation. He requires the active support of the state, to optimize the delivery of governance to the people. So it's in everybody's interest, even if you're in different political parties, to work harmoniously to the benefit of your people. If that is not the case, the people reserve the right to choose an alternative to govern or oversee their affairs. But there have been cases where local government chairmen have not been, I would say, aligned with their governors. And, in some cases, they've survived. In some cases, when elections have come by, they've lost.
Must they align with their governors?
It's not my place.
If you can hear me, must they align with their governors? Must local government council chair align with their governors? There are a different tier of government, and they should have their autonomy.
I think that, Nancy, you can also expand that conversation to say governors have it, right? I mean, the con here is that it's a choice, right? It's not by fiat, right? There are governors who disagree with the president today. There are some who agree, and there are some that agree on certain issues and disagree on others. People have different views on local government autonomy. In my state, for example, we've had council chairmen, even in other local governments, who came out publicly to disagree with the governor, right? So I don't think that there's any fiat that council chairman must be subjugated to governor's authority. No. But you then can't say that, for me, the real issue is not even about some of these softer issues. I think the real question you've asked is, what can we do to accelerate this process? I think the first thing is, in my opinion, a review of the revenue distribution formula. both vertical and horizontal, because that is what solves the real problems. Even if you say local governments, here's your money, pay directly. I've given you the case of local governments today who can't even afford to pay salaries with their allocation. Now, how are those local governments going to survive? How are they going to support things like maternal mortality, vaccine coverage, basic primary education, etc.? So the real issue is, let's first solve the revenue distribution problem, right? Let's first conduct a census, know how many people live where, review the basis of distributing revenues, and ensure that these local governments, when they do have this full autonomy, do not suffer from a tyranny of unfunded mandates. I think that's, for me, the fundamental issue. I think right now we're still majoring a bit in the minors. So to answer you, the real thing we need to do today is to even review how our revenue is distributed, not just across the three tiers of government, but also even within the subnationals, right? In a state, how do you distribute revenues across local governments? How do you ensure that within what is available to that state, it is equitably distributed to allow local governments, execute on their mandates? I think for me, that's, if you ask me for one big thing that we need to think about, that's a conversation nobody's having. As to the improvements in the electoral system, there are constitutional reforms ongoing. There are regional discussions already happening, right? And where we think that we want to strengthen political systems, whether through centrally conducted elections, whether through improvements in subnational elections, those are things that can be subjected to a constitutional reform. So my brother speaks about, the supremacy of the Constitution, right? As long as this is the Constitution that we operate under, then we have to abide by it. The solution to improving that is the process that is going on, and I hope that process comes to a logical conclusion. So I think that's all I'll say on those questions. The questions around improving, the electoral process, I think there are people who are better suited. And I'm an actor in that process in any event, so I'd like to leave that to more independent panelists. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Oyebade. Okay, let me come over to Honorable Yadaki. Of course, this is time for you to respond.
Recording in progress.
The few things that have been said here. But most importantly, I also like you to address the issue that Ajia raised here, the issue of weak capacity, weak accountability, actually, at the local level. And what practical steps is Algon taking to build trust? Because she actually mentioned voter apathy. A lot of people are not interested because they believe that all of Funan are the same. Let me put it that way. So what is Algon doing to build trust, enhance administrative competence, and perhaps reposition local governments as credible engines of grassroots development? Because you guys have a lot of work to do. I think you name streets, local government registration, all those stuff. You should be the one putting the pothole in my own local government area. I shouldn't be looking at Abuja for that.
Okay, thank you very much. I think first, before I answer that to the Honorable Commissioner, I think we're mixing up things. Okay, we're discussing a judgment that was delivered by no less a court a year ago, and then there are issues of constitutional reviews and review of some of our relevant laws. Now, the judgment we're talking about ordered for immediate implementation. And I do not think that any judgment of court desires any gestation period to be implemented, or desires that you seek approval of certain relevant stakeholders before you implement. So to correct some of the issues that have been raised, for us at the local government, we've been paying workers' salaries 100%, and if there are local governments who are not doing that, probably they do not have access to their complete funding. So even without the direct funding, as regards primary health, education, and what have you, the local government has been doing that. I think the states, yes, we play a complementary role, we play a collaborative role, and I do not also want us to look at the
the moment the local government does not have access to those funds. So you cannot be able to clearly
say you have assessed the local government that does not have the capacity to do A, B, C, and D. Capacity to do A, B, C, and D. So this is where we are at the moment. In the last NEC Algon had, where the 36 state chairmen of Algon were present. We made it a 2-day activity. First day we engaged with development partners, civil society organizations, federal MDAs, and even state governments. I was amazed. Some of them were saying, oh, so we have competent people at the local government. The reason why we're not seeing results, it's because the local government is yet to have access to their funds. So this is where we are. And as to what we can do to improve administrators, since the judgment, we have engaged with, had an understanding with the ICPC and the EFCC. We had a lot of training with them, accountability and transparency. You know that the local government chairmen do not have immunity. So it's easy for you to hold them to account. Not that you have to wait until after his 3-year term, or in some cases 4-year term, before they can be held to account. There are a lot of local government chairmen going to EFCC and ICPC on a daily basis to answer questions as regards fiscal accountability in their local government. So if there is any tier of government where you can expect accountability because they will be held to account because of lack of immunity, is the local government. So what Algon is doing right now is to continue to build this capacity of the local administrators to ensure that when this one starts coming, they are able to judiciously apply them in a manner. And for us at local government, capacity here is not about speaking grammar, it's about applying resources in a manner that can impact positively on the lives of the communities. So this is what we term as capacity at our level. And of course, what will address most of these things is the issues around electoral reforms. So we have made our submission to the Constitutional Review Committees of the National Assembly, both the House of Reps and the Senate, where we require that, we need a more independent electoral body, talking about either the federal INEC or an independent body that can conduct local government and give it a uniform term of 4 years, conduct uniform elections for all the local government councils in Nigeria. So by the time you do that, communities will have the opportunity to decide who lists them. So we will no longer be having this conversation around that, the governor sits and picks whoever he wants. The governor has interest. Whoever conducts the election, the governor is at liberty to support whoever he wants. But when we have a more transparent electoral process, it gives every political platform the opportunity to participate and provides the platform for citizens at that level to also participate in electing their leaders.
Okay. All right, thank you very much. Okay, food for thought here, and over to you, Samson, especially with what he just ended with. So we should revisit the quality and credibility of local elections. The ongoing debate if the state independent electoral commissions should continue to conduct, or it should be INEC, or what he had just said now, a new body. And me as a finance person, what's coming to my mind is new bureaucracy again, And in your view, why are local government elections so structurally problematic? And how do we fix that dysfunction? Very quickly.
Well, the moment Honorable Akala, the moment he said an independent body, I looked at him, have you left us? Because the discussion has been that you don't need another body. You need to strengthen CX. So what is the problem with CX? The truth is, in the current constitution that we operate, the CX don't have operational and financial independence. In fact, the constitution says that the operations of CX shall be subject to the approval of the governor of a state. That's what the Constitution says. Unlike INEC, where the Constitution clearly says that the operational independence of INEC is guaranteed in the Constitution and shall not be subject to the approval of the President. So the CX are not independent operationally. When you come to financial independence, INEC is funded from the consolidated revenue of the Federation. If you go to the states, the CX are not funded from the state consolidated revenue fund. So the governor decides from Government House if he chooses, and in most cases, as we've seen from the recent elections, is that the governors just choose not to fund the CX. And they wait until the 11th hour and they release little amount of funds. There are only 1 or 2 governors that have been exceptional, and I will not mention them for some reasons. But across board, it's the same case. So you need to guarantee the independence of CX. I personally, and we've had this discussion with Oga Waziri, and I think that's where we agree, that this tension between centralization and devolution of power is one conversation we need to ask. How much more do we need to devolve, and how much do we need to centralize? And I personally think that the states should be allowed, through constitutional reengineering, to guarantee the independence of CX. So we need to retain CX, but apply the same reforms that we applied for INEC, to the state electoral commissions. And for those of us who are in the room, majority of us here live in Abuja. I hope you are aware that the local government elections for Abuja would hold next year, February. And some of the discussions here, the only way they can matter and make any sense is if you get interested in what's happening in the FCT and the local government elections. Because you can't talk about low turnout in elections when we who are here, who perhaps are the most enlightened, are not participating in our local council elections. And it's going to be a very interesting election to watch. And you said, even if you conduct credible elections at the local government level, one of the things that we've seen is that some of the local government chairmen, even in the FCT, are also decamping to the party of the day. So there are no guarantees anyway. I think what is important is guarantee the independence of CX, get citizens interested in local governments, and also get them to participate after elections. So my charge to all of us who are in this space, especially those of us here, it will be remiss of me if I don't encourage us to participate in the next local government elections. Because as you see, some of the decisions that these guys are making impacts on you. It's February next year, and I hope that we can, record at least 50% turnout of voters, because in the FCT we've never recorded 30%. And for the federal capital, where you have perhaps the most enlightened, very cosmopolitan in nature, I think it's disappointing if we don't show up to vote at the next local government elections.
Thank you, Samson. Now let me take it from where Samson ended, around the worrying trend of disengagement by citizens. And Hajia, you raised that issue earlier on. There's even a more worrisome trend for me also, that civil society is, a bit absent from local governance. Many now focus solely on the federal government as well as the state. We are talking about Abuja then, the state, leaving local government areas in a kind of civic vacuum. So how can we re-energize citizen interest, like Samson just admonished all of us here in the room that we should all be interested? How can we energize that participation and oversight at the local level, so that Honorable Akala and his people will know that people are watching them, and not just the ICPC and EFCC, because they do not have immunity, even especially among women, because for women we are, a force to move, yes, and other vulnerable groups. Quickly. Yeah.
Thank you, Nancy. And I just want to make 3 or 4 points about how to respond to this issue of probably a vacuum, as you say. why most civil society organizations are maybe more present in the urban and in the federal level conversations is because, again, it comes back to apathy. What we would recommend, or rather what we recommend is, first of all, we must fill that trust deficit. Government, especially at the local government, there is a big, wide trust deficit index. Civil society needs to make a deliberate effort and drill down, which is one of the things we have just put on trial. We have a pilot program that has worked in Anambra State, Nancy, looking at market governance, where we found that for the donkey years that we know the strength of women, whatever you call them in Lagos, the big women who run the markets, lodgers. Then in Igbo, in the southeast, look at how much trade is going on at the micro level, which women control, but they have no role in the leadership of markets. We've just put that to the test, and we have now gotten them to be given ex-officio status in the governance of markets. For me, that is a starting point, because when you go to push people into doing something or demanding for accountability, they need to even understand, like I said earlier. So take the practical example of a midwife. Maybe that chairman or that chairperson of the local government was actually delivered by one of the most senior midwives in the society. And then she comes out and vies for consulorship. She's likely to win because the people know her, they trust her, and they respect her. So what we need to be able to do is to ensure that whatever reforms we bring to elections at the local governments connects it to people and the agency they bring to the lives and the livelihoods of the people they are within. The second thing we are looking at is, again, we need to press for political will. And political will is not just an issue of governance or government actors. No, political will means we, the people, again, agreeing that this is what we expect to see and this is what we will demand. So civil society needs to remain vigilant and continuously demanding for political will to be strengthened and to divulge those corners around which citizen agency is being deprived. The third one is citizen participation, which we have discussed actively here. But in doing that, it is very important that we still remain vigilant on what form of elections are happening at the local government. I respectfully agree with what you have said in terms of capacities, but like you said, capacity is not just about education. It is about that willpower for people to organize and collectively demand or provide inputs into governance. So we need to be able to help groups to organize and to also create knowledge and agency that helps them to demand for inclusion and accountability. Lastly, is how do we drill down? Because we're civil society organizations, we should have the capacity to move from the national to the state and to the local governments. At the local governments, we have CBOs, we have groups, we have everything. It is about us working with organizations of like minds in terms of policy reforms and in terms of advocacy to see how we involve. When you involve these people, they will be ready to be pushed into the arguments about how local government funds are spent, who spends them, and what roles they play in. So I believe overall, citizen engagement, voice, agency, and coordination. Thank you, Nancy.
All right, thank you, ma'am. Dr. Yakubu, you've painted a very good picture. You did that earlier, beyond naming, beyond shaming, beyond technology, beyond dashboards, beyond data, and all of that. What innovations or perhaps other institutional reforms do we need to get at the local government councils to ensure that they deliver better results, development-oriented for the people?
Okay. Hello? Maybe just one thing. If you notice, let's say just this hall, take a poll now. and ask people, how many of you know your local government chairman? I can predict it to be less than 20%. What's the allocation of your local government? You still find that it is very low. I don't know why we're obsessed with the federal government. There's this obsession. I don't know whether it's social media or what's driving it. But I think it's the political class. They have succeeded in their propaganda in diverting our attention more to the federal government, not knowing the cumulative of what goes to the state and local governments in total is about 50% too, or more than 50%. So all we need to do now, two things. More citizen engagement, like Mr. Sampson just said. Now, the local government election, people don't even participate. When it's federal elections, we'll all run to our local governments wanting to vote the president, not knowing that is where what happens is at the grassroots. So we need to really improve all the data to demand for more accountability by being involved. Then what I just told Oga Maozo and Ambassador Okafo just yesterday, I said, you people, members of the institute, members of the National Institute, they are retiring and not going back to the local governments to add value. Everybody retires to Abuja and Lagos, so there's low capacity there. Now, when somebody retires as a PAMSEC or as a retired AIG or as an ambassador and goes back to become a councillor, he's not looking for money, he's not looking for anything. The capacity he improves that local government will really elevate. So maybe we need to start pushing retirees, because they are mostly, they have all the experience and the things to do. Everybody should go and run for councillor, not local government chairman, because the demand will be too much. Be a councillor to check whoever the local government chairman is at that time. I think these two things, if we try, would drive, improve the accountability mechanism of local government. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We just have a few more minutes for this panel, perhaps 5 minutes. And while we have 5 minutes, let me just ask for your closing thoughts. And Mr. Oyebode, very quickly, like in 45 seconds, give us what your closing thoughts are.
Thanks, Nancy. I think first it's to ask the rep of the outgoing chairman, when he says local governments don't get money, I wonder his own local government where he's chairman, is he suggesting that someone is diverting the allocation? But I think now closing, for me, it's really we're all rowing in the same direction, right? We're all focused on the development of our country and providing opportunities to Nigerians, right? So it's, for me, an important debate. I don't think there's any right or wrong answer. I think we're all partners in this collaboration. And as a representative of a subnational, ultimately, you know, I come and I reside in a local government, and it's in my best interest for that local government to deliver optimal services to me as a resident. So I think for me, it's just to say there's no dichotomy. Governors or states are not opposed to better functioning local governments. We're all looking for how to optimize this, even if we have different ideas of achieving the same objective. Thank you very much.
Very much, Mr. Oyebode. Honorable, over to you, your final thoughts.
Thank you very much. I think to just correct the impression, I didn't say anybody is diverting any funds. I only said the local government does not have direct funding at the moment. So the state joint account is still in force and is managed by the state government. So I think that should be very, very clear. And for us going forward, we are also trying to also improve in line with transparency. We are digitizing our processes, ensuring that local governments now have functional websites, and also improve in our capacity of budgeting. And now we have projects ongoing on unifying our processes of issuance of birth certificate, indigenization certificates, death certificates, and there are a lot of partnership going on between the local government and the federal government in the areas of primary health and primary education. So the local government is ready to continue to interface with civil society organization, non-governmental organization like the Agora, the Yaga Africa, who have been very, very committed in ensuring that local government is back to life again in our country. So on behalf of the President, we register our profound gratitude for this conversation, and we pray that it yields the desired results. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Samson, over to you.
Well, I'll just say three things. The first one, and it's to everyone here, is we're reflecting on 1 year after the Supreme Court judgment. There was a reason why the court delivered that judgment. And now, to maximize the gains of that judgment, it requires active citizenship. And my call and charge to you here is, you reside in a local government. Please make the effort to care about how that government is governed and that local government is governed. It will cost you two things: your time and your resources. And I tell you, it is not too much a price to pay, because the overall benefit outweighs, the cost that it comes to you. So please get interested. Whether you're in Amak, you're in Karo, you're in Abaji, you're in Gwagwalada, wherever you find yourself, please ask those difficult questions, because democracy is about asking questions at the right time, directed to the right people. And lastly, please vote at the next local government elections. It's February next year. Please vote.
Yeah. Please make it louder if you want to clap. Thank you. All right, Ajay, over to you.
Yes, the final word from women of Nigeria and the marginalized and vulnerable is that we welcome the reforms, because for us it's a promise of hope that we will be able to enjoy better health services, better education for our children, and then also a good involvement in our capacities to contribute to governance. The other thing we would want to call attention to is the fact that we need more awareness. As it is, reform. In fact, it is English. I keep telling people that some of these things we need to decipher them into simple language and into local languages. Have we attempted to translate the court judgment? If we have not, can we do it so that we increase awareness? The more aware people are, and the more they see the stake for them, either as input or benefit, the better for them to participate. So I'm calling on all of us to maybe put forces together, ensure that we drill down knowledge and we create appetite for participation in the reforms and in the elections that decide who governs us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Dr. Akubo.
Okay, hello. Okay, mine is just that as we're advocating for more inclusion of women, more inclusion of youth, more inclusion to everybody should come and vote, we should also not forget that we have too many bad examples of the political class. So that as we're advocating for inclusion, participation, it should involve with integrity. Don't look, that's why we have too many examples of, you tell the youth to go and vie for political office. When they get to the political office, they get to become worse than the people they have seen. Because what they have seen is visual. They see people, they had nothing. When he got to political office, now he has one more wife, he has 2 more cars, he's flying abroad. That is what they are seeing. So we have to imbibe the issue of integrity. It's not just to vote. Why are you voting? It's not just to be included, because now people have managed to define inclusion as my own. What is my own? So that's just my take. Let's all participate, let everyone be involved, but the culture of integrity is very valid for the service and not for the self. Thank you.
Okay, just before we come down, I would take a few interventions here. Perhaps we'll just take 3. We have less than 10 minutes to be done with this session. Yes, because time is fast spent already. We're supposed to have, I see a lot of hands up, but I'm just going to take 3. Okay, I'll take from the ICPC chairman rep here. Then I'll take the lady at the back. Then, please can we extend the mic? Let's start with the lady at the back first. No, sir, you will speak last. The lady at the back there. Then the third person, photographer, I'm not taking you. Can we have from this side too? So I'll take from that side, the man raising his hands up. At the end of the session, we can, network with people here and ask our questions, because our time is fast spent. Okay, very quickly, your question or your intervention, introduce yourself.
Okay, good day, everyone. My name is Lady E. Ejiro Mokoro. I'm the publisher and CEO of Lightree Media. Incidentally, I'm also a fellow of the Agora Policy. I want to go to Itodo. You know why? I'm going to merge it with what Madam said earlier on. We're talking about, look at the Badenoch syndrome that we're seeing. It's a reflection of how the supposedly highly educated, right, who ought to know better, are never involved in the process. You talked about impunity. It begs the question, is the Nigerian cultural psyche based on religion, based on the education we have, is it creating a society where our DNA actually enables the kind of impunity we have, where, like Oga rightly said at the end, you see young persons, they imitate that which they see. They know it's wrong.
Okay,
they know
just
this
go
is not
straight,
the way,
yes.
but they go. So the question I'm asking is, what kind of strategic campaigns? Madam mentioned earlier about the significance of language, using and deconstructing certain terminologies or words to get to the people. So it goes back to what kind of campaigns should we begin to design that we enable supposedly educated, learned people, because they form 50% of the persons who never go out to vote to do better.
Thank you, we've gotten that. The mic should move to the man over there. And please just be brief with your question or intervention. Your hand so that they will see and bring the mic to you. Yes.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Mr. Iroka Chibueze Amos. I'm a concerned and interested Nigerian. Let that suffice for an introduction. Okay, so I just told the lady sitting beside me that the way the call for participation at the local government level came across this afternoon, that because I have never voted in the local government area, and I've been in this from 2009. I've participated in the presidency and all those. I just told her that come February, I'm going to vote. Probably because of the way it just was presented to me.
That deserves an applause now. So,
Yes, probably because of the way it was presented to me. And I'm just asking myself, and by all means, I'm enlightened by God's grace. And at this level, I've not been voting. What about those people below? You can imagine. So it's not far from what my sister said. How do we pass this message to the people right from here down so that there will be this participation that we seek? What modalities, what platforms do we need to break? What do we do? Please, I think we need to concentrate on this. Okay, whatever we want to achieve, if we get this, all of them will fall into places.
Thank you very much. So we're talking about grassroots engagement here. So the last, please bring the mic. Chair.
So thank you very much. Good day all. My name is Bella Idris Bakuri, the Local Government Initiative Division, Head of Local Government Initiative Division. I stand just to make some comments with regard to the reforms of local governments. I have a candid belief that now autonomy of local government is not effectively implemented in the country. So that is why we forwarded to be proactive in identifying financial flow of the local government funds from the federation account or to the individual local government accounts. But to my critical observations, up to now, it's the state government that is frustrating this autonomy, to be frank. So that is why I recommended for the chairman now to go proactively. We designed 6 templates in ICPC, how to track local government funds from the federation account up to the local government individual account, up to the receiving end of the funds. But my sister, it is damn too frustrating. We have identified so many illicit financial flow. So far now, I will not tell you the state and the local governments. We recovered a substantial amount of the illicit financial flow for local governments. And what I'm advising now, more especially Argon, I peruse your communique with that Presidential Implementation Committee with regard to the local government autonomy. I am wondering, why did you be reluctant of accepting that recommendations from the trade unions for local governments, like NOLGA and other sister unions? In that recommendations, you said that the local government funds, let the union dues be deducted at source, and let the personnel cost of local governments be directly forwarded to the Local Government Service Commission. Local Government Service Commission is an extra-ministerial department to the state government. Why the autonomy, if you said that? Why the autonomy? Which means there is no autonomy. Look, Argon Chairman, thank you very much, Dr. Sadiq, Dr. Yakub. The way you are creating an effective synergy with us, with the ICPC, I'm sure, I'm contented, our chairman is encouraging us to track local government financial flow. But I'm advising you, Argon, collaborate with the ICPC so that we can fight for you. Thank you very much.
Very much, sir. Thank you. And thank you for that intervention. All right, over to you, Samson and Hajia, for the response around DNA, as well as if this corruption is actually in the DNA.
You mean to...
Just hold on. Hold on, Hajia. Please, yes, there's a man that came from Mina for this event, so I think it's not worthy for us to take his intervention. You can't come all the way, and let's share what's happening in Niger State. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much for this opportunity. My name is Barrister Alfa Muhammad. I'm the chairman of Citizens' Rights and Judgment Enforcement Advocates. As some of you might have taken notice of a press statement, a launching of a campaign for the enforcement of the local government judgments at Mina about 10 days ago. The heading was Let the Local Government Breathe. We took that action because we discovered that the seriousness of poverty in the country and the insecurity we have in the land today is simply because the local government chairmen are not able to have access to their funds as required by Constitution. So because of that, we decided to embark on that very campaign. And the two demands we only made to the local government, the governor, is that, number one, they should allow the local government chairmen have direct access to their fund. And secondly, they should comply with the provision of the Electoral Act 2022 that provide 4 years for the local government councils so that they will be able to play their role as chief security officers of their various local government. You will agree with me that the economy of the local government today is dead. Many of the local government don't stay in the council area. They go and stay in the capital because they have no fund to perform. The villages, market, many roads, constructions, jobs that are available that empowers the local government, the grassroots people, are non-existent. So it's a request here that the NGOs should come together and see how we make this judgment enforcement a reality. Thank you very much.
So over to you, Ajia.
Okay, just to pick on the last speaker and our brother who has just been converted into NGO here. I think it goes down to what we're saying. Everything depends on how much do the citizens know about what this means to their lives and their livelihoods. So mobilization, education, sensitization, and advocacy remain. And nobody is well placed enough to do that better than civil society. And we need to ensure that the institutions and the local government structures are well engaged. So digestible language, which is what I spoke about, interpretation, even all the structures, all the templates that are being developed for accountability, we need to decipher them into something that people understand. When we have an NGO, like I think it's Code, that is has a program, Follow the Money, I think it's Code. Hamza was in the room some time ago. Now, what it means is they've been able to get local people to understand that there's a structure of allocation, there's a structure of spend, there's a structure of accountability, and there's a structure of impute. When the budgets are being formed, you can impute. When they are released, you can follow and see what is done with it to your life and your livelihood. So again, Nancy, citizen engagement, knowledge, and then digestible language that ensures people understand and they become converted like my brother. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So just to add on that, I think with respect to campaigns, it's about what kind of narratives are we building around values and ethics. And we've got to continue the discussion about patriotism, that our country cannot develop if its people don't love the country. And I think those kinds of narrative are important. So when you're thinking about campaigns, in hacking the minds of people to think differently, we've got to emphasize these national values and ethics. The second is we need to amplify good examples. Often we look at our society and we think that there are no good examples and there are no good stories, because the mind is always receptive to bad stories, right? So we need to look at good examples, celebrate them, and use them as models of influencing behavioral patterns in society. And lastly, when people fail, they should pay for their sins. And this is where consequence actually comes in. And when they are paying for their sins, let us know that they are paying for their sins so that it serves as a deterrence to others. And to my brother, please, after this session, let's talk, because we are very much interested in local elections. And it's, even if you're the only convert here, I think, Mr. Waziri, you should celebrate that you've actually delivered. And I pray that others also see reasons. Please, I beg you, don't be discouraged by the challenges that we see within our society and think that it is not possible to get change. It is very possible. The same way folks in FCT voted, a female senator who is in the National Assembly, is the same way you can get a local government chairman of your choice. But don't make the mistake to think it starts and ends with the elections. After the election, that's when the real work of democracy begins.
Thank you very much. Please, a round of applause. What more can I say than we've had a very fantastic, stellar lineup of panelists that have brought out all the salient points that have been rehashed here. And I know that we've all imbibed, we've all taken it in. Just like Samson said, if we do not even go home with anything, we should go home that we should all engage, participate, and be interested in what happens at our local councils. I said earlier on that I'm from Anyocha North local government area in Delta State. They know me in my state. Even I was given a chieftaincy title in my village as the voice of the voiceless. That's because they know that they have a watchdog, and if you do anyhow, you see anyhow. So I'm employing all of you, everyone in the room, please let's all be engaged. And that's it. Please, a round of applause for our panelists. And I think I'll have to invite the people in front for a photograph now. Yes, I think we should have a photograph session. Madam Chair, yes, let's have a photograph session before we go over to the vote of thanks that will be given by the founder of Agora Policy. Please, another round of applause.
Okay, so thank you so much, everyone. And I think with that, my job is done. When people talk about local, I know that you've heard a lot of things today, so I just want to thank all of you. But please permit me to say a few things as part of your take-home, apart from the small envelope that you get. The assumption is that the government that is the closest to the people will also be the government that will be the most important in their lives. But that is not the way it's playing out in Nigeria. It's assumed that the closer the government is to the people, the more effective, the more impactful, and the more efficient it will be. But if we want it to be that way, we have to be involved. And in Nigeria, for example, we have a constitution that gives very serious responsibilities to the local government areas. In fact, as far as we are concerned in Agora policy, the local government areas are the most important tier of government, because almost everything that should matter to you, the primary school or basic education, the primary health care center, the road in front of your house, the refuse or the garbage in front around your house, the market that you go to, places where you register your bat and possibly passing, all of those things, the street lights, those are the things that local government areas should do. But as many people have said here, we're not even aware that these are the responsibilities of local government areas. And we're not even aware of how to ensure that we're part of the process. And it's not just that our constitution in Schedule 4, or the 4th schedule, gave these enormous responsibilities to the local government areas, but we also have an arrangement where we have adequate resourcing for our local government areas. There's one of the charts that we had in the morning, and please take your time to think about this. We look at different federal countries and see the level of resource allocation to local government areas. And in Nigeria, local government areas control or get 22% of the tax revenues. The only country that has a percentage that is higher than that of Nigeria is Switzerland. So this is almost a quarter of the tax revenues in the country go to local government areas. So one of the things that we need to constantly think about, and like it has also been mentioned, between June 1999 and last month, local government areas in Nigeria got allocated 35 trillion naira. That's $145 billion. The question to ask is, where has the money gone to? And more than that, how do we ensure that, now that we're talking about autonomy and all of that, we should ensure that this money counts? So, like everybody has said, yes, if we assume that the people who have the autonomy, they will be able to do the right thing, they might. They also might not. We have a role to play. We have to be involved. We have to be engaged. We have to ask questions. We have to participate. And let's have this in mind, that money does not belong to them. It belongs to us. And our own position at Agora Policy is that if the local government areas work better, it will be in the interest of all of us. So let's see this as more than just talking about having better elections. Let's see this as more than having direct allocations or all the money that should go to them. Let's see it as an opportunity to change the development outcome in our country from grants up. And let's look at beyond just those two things. Let's think about it in a holistic manner. Let's think about it in the sense that what are the other things we need to do beyond having free and fair elections? They're very important. Beyond giving them their money directly, they are very important, but they are not enough. There are many things that we need to do. And so for us, we have to be thinking, and Professor Ayede talked about 5 decades of implementing reforms in this country. We have to approach this from a reform mindset. We have to think about what is that, what do we need to do in terms of a holistic reform approach to ensure that local governments work for us. On that note, I want to thank everyone. I will start by thanking the Honorable Minister in absentia. It takes a lot for him to have come here. We're really grateful for that. We're also grateful to Dr. Kole Shetima of MacArthur Foundation, for not just support this, for all the support and for the faith. Our chair, Madam Ojobo Atiluku, she got here before many people and she's still here. We thank her for her leadership. We thank the partners working with us on this, Center for Fiscal Transparency and Public Integrity, the CABLE, and the African Cities Research Consortium. Extremely grateful to all the people that provided Goodwill messages. Debbie Issa is still here. Thank you so much. The lady from British High Commission, Professor Diana Mitlin, Professor Olaopa, Barrister Murako from FRC, and others. I'm very, very, very grateful to the panelists, and I have learned so much by just listening to them. And from my very good friend and brother, Akin Oyebode, the Commissioner for Finance and Economic Development, Ekiti, my very good brother and in-law, Mr. Samson Tudu, the chairman of Argon, Honorable Bolu Yandaki, ably represented, effectively represented by Honorable Akala Samuel Gajere. Akala is not the one from Oyo State, he's from Nasarawa. He was actually chairman of Karu local government area. My brother, Dr. Umar Yakubu, and last but not the least, our mother, Ajia Sadatu Madi. We're very honored that you find the time to be here with us and to honor us with your insights and your experience. And last but not the least, the chief. She's actually a chief, Chief Nancy Ilo Inaji, for comparing this event and also for moderating this the panel. And I also have to thank you. You've been here. Today is a rainy day. You have all the excuses to be elsewhere, including to just stay under your duvet. But you chose to be here. You chose to be here. You listen attentively. You are here in mind and soul. So we really thank you. And I hope that this event has been as useful to you as it has been to us. And the last thing I want to leave everybody with is that, please, don't let us see this as a conversation of different sides. It's not about the bad guys and the good guys. It's not about we versus them. We have a problem. We need to make our local government areas work better. At the moment, they are working at a suboptimal level. We need to increase the level of effectiveness, of responsiveness, of accountability, and of impact at that level. And that will be in the interest of all of us. So it's a collective problem. And we need a collective approach, and we need to come together and see how, not just how do we advance the judgment, but how do we ensure that autonomy is not for its sake. Free and fair election is not for its sake. If we have all of those things that they do not translate to better life for our country, for our people, then it's all a waste. So please, let's all be committed to that. Let's vote, like people have said. But it's not just about voting. Let's participate during election, after election, and forevermore. And please, let the conversation continue. Thank you so much, and God bless.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you all for your presence. Let me just rehash it as we bring this event to a close. Your attention and, of course, your contributions. Like he has said, the local government is not a footnote in Nigeria's democracy. It is a front line. So until we meet again, I am Nancy Naji. Let's go from words to work. Have a brilliant afternoon, everybody.